What's up, everybody? Newman back. Welcome to the 27th episode of Godzilla-Thon. This one is for Godzilla 2000. Yeah, well, I mean, sort of. This is also Godzilla Millennium. If you're going off the Japanese title, technically, it shouldn't even be called Godzilla 2000. It should be called Godzilla 1999, because that's the year it came out. But today we're going to be doing the review for the first of the Millennium Era Godzilla movies, that being the popular title, Godzilla 2000. This will be for the English dub because I didn't realize that the Japanese cut isn't even on the DVD that I have. I don't know what DVD I have. I'm looking at the case, looking for some distributor. I don't know. It's a TriStar DVD. I don't know why it'd come with a French version, but not a Japanese version. And that annoys me. I really was curious to see the Japanese version. Everyone who's seen it has told me, oh man, it's so much worse than the English cut. And it's like, I really want to see why. I want to see what's so bad about it. I mean, I don't like the English cut all that much. I don't hate it. I'm kind of neutral on it, except, I don't know. I probably lean towards more of disliking it than I lean towards liking it. And I know a lot of people love this movie. This was a lot of people's first Godzilla movie. I grew up with this movie in a sense. I mean, I used to watch it a lot as a little kid, but I didn't watch it a lot as a young enough kid to, like, have fond memories of it. I watched it at an era where it's just, like, to the point where I can hardly even remember watching it, but I definitely remember playing with this toy car. I had a yellow Jeep toy, and I used to play with it like it was the Godzilla Prevention Network, and I used to, like, drive it up dirt and like chase around my Godzilla toys with it. I had a really cool Godzilla 2000, I don't know what kind of toy he was. He was like rubberish and clear. I still have him. He's clear, like completely yellow and clear. I don't know. I used to chase him around with that Godzilla Prevention car that I used to have. I mean, I have memories of liking this movie. Just, I haven't watched this movie in such a long time. Going back to it, I didn't really enjoy it, but I don't even know what I'm talking about. I forgot what I even started talking about. The Japanese cut. The Japanese cut's worse, and I don't know how that could be because I don't love this version. So I'm interested to see why it's so much worse than this version. That's really the gist of what I tried to say and got sidetracked. Also, the DVD art on my Godzilla 2000 DVDs, I have 3 DVDs of Godzilla 2000, all of them the same. The DVD art is phenomenal. I mean, it is. It's a lot cooler than the movie, that's for sure. Godzilla's design looks cooler than he does in the movie, too. Although his tail's like 13 miles long in the poster, I just realized that. And he's probably a couple thousand feet tall. But who cares? It looks awesome. Okay, so this movie, I don't really know what to make of it. It's not an event film, that's for sure. You have the original movie, go through, destroy all monsters is an event film. That is the ending. It is a big event. Alright, Terror of Mechagodzilla is not a big event film because they just ended it abruptly. They didn't have the plan to end it with that movie. That's just how things wound up. So that one couldn't have been a big event film. You have 1985, which feels like, or 1984, which feels like a big event film in my opinion. And then you have Godzilla vs. Destroyer, which is like the biggest event Godzilla movie to date. Now, you have this film come along, and I'm excluding the 98 version because it doesn't follow a continuity. Like, it doesn't stick to the 1954 continuity, so I'm not going to talk about 98 here because of that reason, not because I don't like the movie or whatever. This movie, it's a sequel to the original 1954 movie, but it does not feel like a big event. Like, nothing in this movie makes you be like, oh man, Godzilla's back and things are going down. It just feels, run-of-the-mill, same thing we've seen over and over again. It just doesn't feel that special in my opinion. Now, one of the things that strikes me about this movie, about the English cut specifically, is there is no real defined continuity. You don't know where this movie takes place. For all we know, this is the continuation of the Showa era. This is what happens after Terror of Mechagodzilla. Godzilla gets mutated even further than he was in those old Showa movies, winds up the creature that we see him as in this movie. That's a possibility. I think the official canon for this movie is that it is a direct sequel to the 1954 Godzilla, excluding all other Godzilla movies. That's the one we're supposed to go with this movie. I know that. I'm just saying that in this movie itself, there's nothing that clearly defines the status quo or continuity of the series. Whereas previously, 1985, very, very clear that they were excluding all of other movies other than the 1954 one. So this one I just don't think does a good enough job telling us where we are in some sort of universe. It just starts us right out without, letting us know what's going on. I do really like the idea of a storm chasers for Godzilla. It's something that I've always thought was really interesting. It kind of reminds me of in the Heisei era how we had a lot of real world stuff going on towards the beginning of the Heisei era, with a lot of the political stuff and everything going on there. So I do like the fact that now in this movie, in this new Millennium era, we are picking back up with the trend of having very real world situations in a Godzilla movie. And storm chasers, although they are crazy people in real life, they're real, they exist. So I really like the idea that it's implemented into the Godzilla series, and we never see anything quite like it again. They explain that they can track where Godzilla is by watching for plasma spikes on a monitor to alert them where Godzilla is when he's nearby and so on, so they can predict where he's going to make landfall, let people know, and then they can prevent death by having people evacuate. They don't do a great job because Godzilla immediately makes landfall in this movie and they don't let anyone know. This movie starts out with some great scale. There's an incredible shot of a man sitting inside of a lighthouse, and he looks outside the window, and you just see a boat moving past the window, and he's freaking out. He's like, how could that even be possible? And then Godzilla moves past, and the boat's in his mouth. Why the boat's in his mouth, I don't know. They don't ever explain it. It doesn't really seem like he needed to eat anything on it, but I guess it's just because it's a cool shot. Godzilla walks, out. He's hidden in the fog the whole time. They do a great job building up to his reveal. Like I said, this movie has some amazing scale, which is really funny because this Godzilla is not that big. He is Showa height. I think he's back down to 50 meters from 100. He is half the size he was in the Heisei era, and it still does a better job making you feel how huge he is in this movie than it ever did in the Heisei series, which is something that I love they improved upon. That is one of the few things that I think they improved upon. Godzilla's new design. That is something that I do not think they improved upon. A lot of people love this design. When I was a kid, I loved this design. I really thought the spiky things on his neck. He has like this clear portion on his neck where it's all smooth, and then he has these spikes sticking off each side of his neck that opens up to the scales all across his body, and his body starts really, really scaled and deep, like the cuts between the scales, the crevices, really deep, and the further down the body you go, you lose a lot of that detail, and he becomes more like smoothed out until you hit the legs, and each leg is very deep cut. It's a very intricate, interesting looking design. Personally, I'm just not a big fan of it. I've never thought that the spiky dorsal fins were all that cool. I think that the dorsal fins in Godzilla 2000 are much longer than they ever should be. They're like incredibly long, stick so far off his back. I just don't like the design all that much. I think he looks cool. I do. I get why people like this design. It's just not Godzilla to me. Godzilla to me, very smooth. You can even have him not be smooth. He doesn't have to be smooth. Just Godzilla to me is the maple leaf dorsal fins, Heisei design, or if you're going to go with something more jagged, I want something more like the 54 design, which was very roughed up but not super sharp. I like the idea that he's been withered away, not that he's been turned into like this super sharp, kind of agile fighting machine. I don't really find that as interesting. I mean, it works in some movies, Final Wars, not this movie in my opinion. I just don't think it looks good compared to some of the other designs, and I just don't think it holds up very well. That being said, it is cool and serviceable for the movie. Next movie, however, they take the same design and give it a new paint job. Oof. I don't even want to talk about that now. I hate it. This Godzilla, though, he is greener than he's really ever been before. Godzilla Jr. doesn't count in the Heisei era. He was straight up green, but he wasn't Godzilla. This Godzilla is greener than any Godzilla we've ever seen, and his dorsal fins have hints of purple, something that they're going to take to an extreme next movie and really, really turn me off to this design. That actually might be, now that I think about it, why I dislike this design as much as I do, is because of how it's presented next movie. And I know that's kind of unfair for me to judge this without, like, judge this on its own, comparing it to the next movie or with the next movie information in my head. I don't know. It is unfair, I get it, but you know what? It's my review. I can do whatever I want. I do really like the way they keep Godzilla hidden, though. It reminds me a lot of his reveal in 1984 when he comes out of the fog. It's just great suspense. They do a really good job building up suspense, and I find that very intriguing. So the Godzilla Prevention Network gets a little too close for comfort, and one of the girls snaps some pictures in Godzilla's face, makes him real angry. They just got too close for comfort, I guess. He doesn't like him, so he tries to kill him, which is kind of weird because we see him standing in front of this tunnel. He's smacking his hand down, trying to grab at him, and then all of a sudden his foot just starts coming down through the tunnel, and you're like, well, how did he get from point A to point B that quickly? He's a giant 100-foot dinosaur. He cannot just scale a mountain like that. Like, he doesn't have that kind of flexibility or range. Whatever, it makes for a cool shot, despite the fact that every time I've watched this movie, even as a little kid, I've had questions as to why the dad, when reversing out of the tunnel, reverses straight into a wall and then just stays there pressed against the wall. I don't know how that could be. You know, he just must suck at driving. That's all I'm going to say about that. Godzilla's got a new roar this movie. It's a very deep, angry version of his regular roar. He also uses some of the 98 roars in here whenever he's getting hurt. The roar is cool. They use it throughout all the Heisei, or the Millennium movies, I mean. They use it throughout all the Millennium movies. It's just, it doesn't have that classic Godzilla feel to me, and that's something that this movie really lacks, in my opinion. I know this movie is a throwback to the Showa films, and I love the Showa films, but it's not a Showa film. I don't think it works as well as they wanted it to. Anyways, the roar, it's cool. In some movies, I don't think it's as cool as Godzilla's normal roars, or even the Heisei roar. I loved his roar throughout the Heisei era, minus the 84 roar. Although I do think that one's really cool, I don't think it works with any Godzilla but that Godzilla and Shin Godzilla, so I'm glad they didn't keep using it throughout all the movies. I'm glad they went back to a much more classic roar throughout the rest of the movies, although that Heisei roar, probably the standard one, is my favorite roar of all time. You know, the Showa roar is great and everything. It just might be a little too whiny now that I think about it, like too high-pitched, whereas the Heisei was just perfect. This one's too deep and grungy for me. Like, it's too bass-heavy, I guess. I don't know what I want to say. You guys, I feel like it's really hard for me to articulate my thoughts on why I don't like the sound design of his roar. I had the same problem talking about why I had the problems with the sound design for Godzilla's Atomic Breath and Godzilla vs. Mothra from the 90s, so, you know, I guess I'm just not great at talking about sound design. There is some great integration and interaction between the humans and the monsters in this movie. There's a lot of really impressive shots of people in cars or jets or on foot in front of the monsters in the background, but both are moving simultaneously and the camera's moving at the same exact time, so you have three major things moving at once, and all the shots generally look pretty convincing. They do last a little too long, and the effect is ruined when sometimes you see Godzilla shaking in the distance, like they didn't insert him properly into one place. So the effect does get ruined when the shots linger too long, but generally they look amazing. We just randomly cut to this meteor that's being investigated underwater. I don't know why we had to cut to it during the middle of a destruction scene with Godzilla, but we do. It's just a big rock meteor under the water. Real cool. There's some very reminiscent shots of the 1954 Godzilla's attack during this Godzilla's attack at the start of this movie. It's very cool. And it kind of feels like this whole opening scene with Godzilla destroying the city is Toho showing off their special effects, showing off how far they've come from the early 90s, and showing off how much better at special effects with giant monsters they are than America, who just previously released Godzilla 1998 the year before. So the meteor is studied underwater. It's either... I couldn't figure this scene out. No matter how many times I watch this movie, I never understand what's happening. Either the meteor is sprouting underwater volcanoes, or there's underwater volcanoes all around the meteor. Either way, they say it's like a underwater volcano ocean or something stupid like that. I don't know. That's another shot that always lasted with me. That's like a thing that stuck with me as a little kid, was those underwater volcanoes. And there was a mall when I was a little kid that used to have these big balloons, like these big they were like parachutes almost, and then they'd blast water around them or something. I mean, I'm a really little kid, so my memory of it is definitely not accurate. But as a little kid, every time I'd see this fountain, it was like a big fountain spraying up, and there were these balloons at the fountain. Every time I saw that fountain, I was reminded of this movie, reminded of the underwater volcanoes from the fountain, reminded the balloons looked identical to the balloons that they used to pull the meteor out of the water later on in the movie. So, I don't know. That's just something that's always stuck with me. It's a shot that every time I see just kind of takes me back to being a child, but to a point in my childhood where I was so young that I can't pinpoint the memory. Like, it's one of those where you can't quite remember what happened, but you remember something vaguely like that happened. So it's just kind of one of those interesting things for me. I really like the idea that Godzilla's radiation ruins camera film when you get too close to him. However, just like the 98 movie, they never do anything very interesting with the radiation aspect of Godzilla. I've said many times, if I were to direct a Godzilla movie which, fingers crossed, someday hopefully I will be able to, I do plan on making it the most dark horror movie, realistic tone that I can. And by realistic, I mean real to the point where Honda wanted it to be in the 1954 movie, not real to the point where, they thought they were going to try and take it with the 98 movie. That kind of horror tone that they had with the 54 movie, that's the kind of thing I want to go for. Something that I'd play around a lot with is the radiation aspect of Godzilla, because I feel like all these movies that bring it up have great concepts, but they never do anything interesting with them. They just bring them up and then leave them on the surface. I've been still waiting for a movie to do something very concretely interesting with this idea, other than the 1954 movie. There's a lot of odd slapstick throughout this movie. I'm just going to say now, I don't like it. I don't find it funny. I'm not a big fan of slapstick comedy, so I'm just gonna move on. I guess Always Sunny in Philadelphia is kind of an exception to that rule, but that's not really slapstick. They don't really go to the extent that they do in this movie, where it's like a dude hitting another dude in the head with the wood pole. It's real funny, and he's gonna get hit in the head with the wood pole a couple more times, and it's just gonna be it's just the kooky neighbors. It's real funny. I don't, it doesn't do anything for me. I just find it dumb. Now the meteor is pulled to the surface of the water. This is what I was talking about with those balloons. Suddenly, when it's being pulled up to the surface by these balloons, it just shoots towards the surface, pops all the balloons, just heads straight towards the surface of the water. They're all like, whoa, it has consciousness, which my personal reaction would have been like, oh man, it must have been weighed down by something down there. It must have been like attached to the rocks below it or something, and then it's kind of hollow inside. So once we broke it off the rocks, it just naturally lifted to the top of the ocean. But somehow they make the leap to, no, this thing's an alien. It's from space, which, that's probably like the last place I'd go with it. But they get there pretty quickly in this movie. They just come to that conclusion very quickly. Yuki, she is our reporter girl of the movie, is called in by, I spelled his name wrong here, so I'm going to be pronouncing it wrong until I see it written later. His name is Shinoda. His name is Shinoda. All right, I wrote his either first or last name like Misaru or something like that. I can't quite tell what I wrote there. So Yuki's called by Shinoda to see Godzilla make landfall. Katagiri, the bad guy of the movie, shuts down nuclear reactors in the area where Godzilla is presumably landing. The idea in this movie is that Godzilla comes on land to attack energy sources, and he just kind of has this vendetta against human energy. He hates all electricity and all nuclear energy, which is interesting, but again, they don't do anything crazy interesting with it. The meteor rises vertically into the water, and it just kind of faces the sun. The army prepares a big, huge attack on Godzilla. New missiles will be developed against Godzilla that can pierce any surface. Godzilla surfaces and is attacked by the military. Godzilla is badly hurt by these missiles. There's a really cool scene. It does last a little too long, but there's a cool scene of Godzilla walking up onto land, and they're just shooting these missiles into his chest, and every time one hits his chest, skin and just blood and chunks are just flying everywhere. Like, this is doing some damage to Godzilla. And this really, like, when a lot of people complain and they're like, I can't believe Shin Godzilla bleeds, it's like, this movie shows flat out, like, this is a previous Godzilla movie. There's precedent in the past for Godzilla to be badly injured by the military to the point of bleeding. Case in point, this movie. However, the distinct difference between this movie and Shin Godzilla, the one that they have against Godzilla 98, is that in both these movies, Godzilla and Shin Godzilla, neither time does Godzilla die. In Godzilla 1998, Godzilla does die. So Godzilla Millennium and Shin Godzilla do have that leg up on 98, even though all three movies do feature Godzilla bleeding after being attacked by the military. Also, both movies, which is Godzilla Millennium and Shin Godzilla, have a valid excuse for why Godzilla would be bleeding as a result of the military, whereas 98's excuse is realism. Who cares about realism? It's a giant monster movie. So like I said, it's revealed that the meteor is attracted to the sun, and it starts scanning for DNA, like the best DNA that it can take up the form of to inhabit Earth. It flies away. The UFO intercepts Godzilla. The UFO attacks Godzilla. It has this like beam that shoots out of a hole in it. Godzilla's firing off his atomic breath. He has a new version of the atomic breath, which is a red atomic breath similar to the Heisei era. However, it's more fiery and crackly compared to what we're used to. And it also produces much more heat than we've seen before, if we can tell, based off the way it's presented in this movie and based off the way his dorsal fins are. Godzilla is blasted into the ocean and has to retreat because he's so hurt by this big spaceship. And then the spaceship flies away because Godzilla shot it up with the atomic breath. There's some great stuff with Godzilla's footprints on the beach, and by great stuff, I mean really impressive shots of this dude, Shinoda, riding his motorcycle around. The massive scale of Godzilla's footsteps on the beach, that they were actually there, real footprints in the beach that they put there. Looks really cool the way he's investigating them. It was a great scene. The big rock meteor starts to evolve into a metallic silver UFO. The rock goes still, and the military tries to contain it. They find out it's powered by light. Shinoda and Yuki ask Katagiri to help study Godzilla's skin. The UFO hacks Yuki's laptop to find information about Godzilla, which is one of the most interesting ideas of this movie. The fact that the enemy of this movie, the bad guy, the other kaiju, interacts with the humans in this way, where it hacks our technology to find out about its opponent, shows a great level of intelligence that we've never seen with a monster Godzilla's fought before. It's very interesting. It is discovered Godzilla has a super quick healing factor in this continuity. People often get this confused with every continuity. In this continuity alone, it's revealed Godzilla has a super fast healing factor that goes beyond all other creatures known to man. It's soon called Regenerator G1, similar to the way that Wolverine's skin regenerates. I think it does take Godzilla a little bit longer than Wolverine. Orga has that kind of on-the-spot rapid heal factor later on in the movie when he takes some of the Regenerator G1, but standard Godzilla does not have this. This is just this continuity, and I don't know if it happens in the next movie as well, where he has the same regenerative properties, but usually Godzilla will sustain an injury and he'll have to heal at a normal rate, or he's just so thick-skinned that he doesn't sustain the injury at all. So the meteor is dormant during the night. Shinoda used to work for Katagiri, we find out, or used to work with them, but they left. They parted ways because Shinoda felt that they were doing research for quote-unquote all the wrong reasons, aka Katagiri wants to kill Godzilla, which doesn't make him a bad guy. However, later on in the movie, he does prove himself to be a bad guy, trying to kill Shinoda, trying to blow him up. I don't know where that comes from. It's a real forced villain plot, if I have to say so. It's really forced. It comes out of nowhere. I don't like the conflict. It's boring. I don't like these human characters. The UFO evolves out of a rock and into that giant silver sleek shape that I was talking about, and it flies away. The UFO starts blowing up helicopters. It lands on a news station. The CGI in this movie, I want to mention now because the UFO is all CGI for the most part, doesn't look that good. It's not impressive at all. There's a lot of CGI in this movie that just falls flat. However, all the suitmation stuff looks incredible. All the miniatures look incredible. There's a real weird shot of Godzilla swimming under the ocean in this movie that looks straight pulled out of Godzilla Unleashed, the video game for the Wii. Just real bad special effects in this movie when it comes to CGI. Glad that they didn't use too much of it. I don't know what the shot of Godzilla was necessary for either. It just looks real bad. So people gather around the building to watch the UFO. It's kind of a nod to Independence Day, which kind of feels like an FU to Independence Day because that was made by Roland Emmerich. Roland Emmerich ruined Godzilla the year before, and it kind of feels like Toho's like, hey, you wanted to rip off other movies, we're going to rip off your movie, and then we're just going to make a good Godzilla movie, which is something you failed to do in the first place. I don't know, that's just the way I interpret it. The army plans to blow up the UFO at night. Yuki's laptop and all other computers in the Shinjuku area are hacked by the UFO. It is researching humanity and especially Godzilla. Katagiri orders the building that the UFO landed on to be blown up, but Yuki is still inside. She's trying to shut down the hacking before the UFO finds all the information it's looking for, or at the very least, she's trying to understand what it's looking for. Shinoda stays. Shinoda and his daughter run into the building to try and stop Yuki. So Shinoda stays behind to find out what the hacking's all about. Katagiri blows up the building with Shinoda still inside. The top of the building explodes, but the rest of it stays intact. So you're like, oh yeah, he's totally fine. And then all of a sudden, the UFO blows up the rest of the building, and Shinoda's dead. No, I'm just kidding. He's fine. The building does blow up, though. It's a huge explosion. It's kind of a recreation of some of the shots from Independence Day. Very cool stuff. It just visually looks cool. I'm not sure about the science of someone, riding down an elevator shaft being faster than an exploding UFO blast thing on a building. But, it happens, and he's okay. So the UFO plans to turn Earth into its own planet by taking Godzilla's form. Godzilla makes landfall. Godzilla heads for the ship. And by the ship, I mean the UFO. There's great effects in this movie, I keep mentioning that, but there's too much motion blur and a little bit too much green screen here and there. There's a lot of Godzilla in real cities, which is something I talked a lot about with the Godzilla vs. Destroyer review. Godzilla in real world cities. However, this movie does a nice integration of actual miniatures, so we see Godzilla destroying the buildings that he's walking through. We cut for a couple, 30 seconds to him walking through a real-life city, cutting back to the miniatures to see some destruction. It never feels like you're just watching the cities like you were in Godzilla vs. Destroyer. It is a very nice blend of the two methods. The alien wraps up Godzilla in these tentacles that it shoots out from the ground, taking some of his DNA and his regenerator G1. Godzilla hits the UFO with the atomic breath. His dorsal fins, They light up and they start producing heat in this movie. That's one very cool aspect, and the crackling sound that it makes is really interesting and very original and cool. And I love the way that Godzilla is so hot based off his dorsal fins and his atomic breath inside of his mouth that it melts the tentacles that are touching his body. Really cool. And then Godzilla unleashes the atomic breath. I don't know where this one ranks on the power scale. I wouldn't say this atomic breath is stronger than the Heisei red atomic breath, but I would say it's up there. It's definitely stronger than anything from the Showa era, probably anything from the Heisei era minus the red atomic breath. It's probably equally as strong as Shin Godzilla's breath if I had to guess where Shin Godzilla's breath ranked. This one just seems incredibly powerful. So the UFO scans Godzilla's DNA again, like I said. This is where it takes more Regenerator G1. The UFO uses telekinesis to beat up Godzilla before evolving into a UFO-headed tentacle monster. Then it falls over and dies. It accidentally wakes up the knocked out Godzilla and turns into the kaiju known as Orga. It's never called Orga in this movie, however, we do know from the video games, officially licensed comics, and toys that this monster is called Orga, so I will be referring to him as Orga for the rest of the review. Godzilla destroys the UFO. There's a huge, like a very physical punching fight, really great physical combat in this movie. We have not seen that since... we haven't seen that since the Showa era. We have not seen great physical fights in a Godzilla movie since the Showa era, so it's great to see Godzilla and Orga beating each other up. Orga does a lot of punching. There's one point when he flat out punches Godzilla straight in the face. It's awesome. He does a lot of biting, and he does a lot of jumping. And he also uses half of the blown up UFO to fight Godzilla. Godzilla blows up all of the UFO. Godzilla mainly uses his fists and his claws, a little bit of his tail, not really, and his atomic breath to fight Orga. Godzilla blows off Orga's head, but it starts to regenerate. Godzilla just goes and beats down on Orga. Orga starts to become a Godzilla clone after eating some Godzilla cells. His skin turns all green. Orga's nearly killed by Godzilla before trying to devour him. Orga's mouth just super wide opens up, and then he goes and starts just eating Godzilla. He starts to develop dorsal fins identical to Godzilla's before Godzilla's dorsal fins start to light up. This crackling sound starts up. This was something that always got me really excited as a kid. And Godzilla just disintegrates Orga. Like, his whole head just starts to melt on top of Godzilla. Godzilla does either the atomic breath or an atomic pulse inside of Orga's mouth. It's unclear which one he does. But a massive explosion and covers a whole block of the city just goes off all at once. Orga's killed. The body just stands there without a head for a little bit before falling over completely dead. Out of the ashes comes Godzilla, who's just killed Orga. He walks over, kills Katagiri. There's this weird line by Shinoda about there's a little Godzilla inside of all of us. That's why he keeps saving the Earth. So I guess Godzilla saved the Earth by destroying Orga, so Godzilla saves the Earth and immediately follows it up by destroying Tokyo. The credits play over the destruction of Tokyo as Godzilla becomes, I guess you could say, an anti-hero. However, the whole movie he's presented as a villain up until that one line when they're just like, yeah, he's our hero, Godzilla, and then he's like literally destroying the city as they speak, so very weird. The human stuff in this movie is not good. It's cheesy, the characters are not memorable at all, in my opinion. They're just dull. They don't do anything for me. Notice how I didn't mention the daughter. Like, I mentioned her, I think, once or twice. I didn't mention the daughter, and she's the main character of this movie. That is how unimportant these characters are. I just left out an entire, like, major subplot of this movie, and you didn't... it didn't even detract from the review. Like, it doesn't matter. She's such an unimportant character. All the characters in this movie are so unimportant. I don't like Shinoda. I don't like any of them. I don't like Katagiri. I already talked about his villain motivations. Don't make any sense. They just come out of nowhere. I just find this movie not to be interesting with the human stuff at all. It's very cheesy as well. Dialogue's not that great. I just don't like it. The kaiju stuff, though, is really good. It's a very big redeeming factor of this movie. However, I don't like Godzilla's design, and I think he is a bit too small in this movie. You know, in the modern day, I don't want Godzilla under 75 meters. He just doesn't look menacing that way. I guess GMK proves me otherwise, but that's one exception. Godzilla generally doesn't look menacing in these new movies because he's so small compared to everything we've built. The effects in this movie are pretty good. There's a lot of great fist fighting, which goes along with the monster stuff. It's really cool to see the way they're using these special effects now that they've kind of perfected suitmation. They can do a lot more with it than they ever could before, and they don't make the suits too bulky to where the actors can't move inside. They really are at their top game in this movie, and they will only continue to get better and better and better until Godzilla Final Wars. Like I said, there's a lot of impressive shots throughout this movie, but there is a lot of bad CGI as well. The music in this movie is not good, in my opinion. I keep saying that because I know I have to keep stressing that point, but a lot of people don't understand that these videos aren't facts. They are just my reviews, my interpretations of the movie, and a lot of people act like I'm just speaking like, oh, these are facts, and if you disagree with me, then you're wrong. Like, I never say that. I don't care if you disagree with me. Good for you. If you can find enjoyment in a movie that I can't, good for you. I don't like the music in this movie. It's too slow for me. There's only one good song, which is the intro song that's also used as Godzilla's theme. It's just, that's the one good song that I find in this movie. The rest of them are just really slow and boring. There's no real Godzilla music, there's no music that makes me go, oh, that's Godzilla. The English cut works in some Ifukube here and there, but it's just this, like, synthesizer Ifukube stuff. It's not, like, great. I think the next movies will get a lot better with the music. I think the music throughout the rest of the Millennium era is generally pretty good. It does get a little old because they just reuse the same composer who, although I credit Ifukube for doing it, reuses their same scores over and over again to the point where it's iconic, sure, but I'd like some more variety. That does it for this review, guys. Overall, I'm going to give Godzilla 2000, aka Godzilla Millennium, a 7.5 out of 10. It's not that bad. Like I said at the start, I'm kind of neutral on this movie. I do lean more towards dislike than I do like, although there are a lot of things to redeem this movie, at least the way I see it. So, thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time. D-Man, out. What's up, everybody? Demon back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing the 28th episode of Godzilla-Thon. This one will be my review for Godzilla vs Megaguirus. Now, this movie kind of caught me off guard. It kind of took me by surprise because of how, I don't want to say good it was, because I still don't like the movie, but how not bad it was compared to what I thought it was going to be. Originally, I remembered this movie being very slow, very boring. There was just a lot of unnecessary things going on. I always hated the character because in my mind, the main character was the little kid. I didn't have any good memories of this movie. And then I watched it and realized that a lot of the problems I have with the movie don't really exist. Now I have new problems with the movie, but I kind of went into this movie with the bar set so low that I kind of had to like it when it didn't have anything that I thought it had in it. So I'm going to get into this review, and it's going to be kind of weird because I still haven't really gathered my thoughts on this movie, I hated this movie for so many years, and now I watched it, and it's not like I said, it's not like I like the movie. I still don't like the movie, but it's definitely not on my top 5 most hated movie list anymore for Godzilla movies. I mean, actually, it might be, but it definitely wouldn't be on the list for the same reasons that it was the first time, which was originally, like I said, I just thought it was a super slow, boring movie. And I remember as a little kid, there were things about it that I totally remember different than how they were actually in the movie, and we'll talk about that later on. Now, I do want to say here, this is the first time I've watched this movie in probably 4 or 5 years. Usually when I do Godzilla-Thon, I don't make it this far, or I skip this movie. Like, the furthest I ever made it in Godzilla-Thon was Final Wars, and that was back in 2014-15, that school year. And by the end of the school year, I had made it to around Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla 2, and so then from there, I kind of just skipped around. I skipped to Destroya, I skipped Space Godzilla, skipped straight to Destroya, watched Godzilla 2000, skipped to GMK, and then skipped to Final Wars. So, I don't know, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie last, so I have some pretty fresh thoughts on it. And initially, as a little kid, this was something that always bothered me, and it still does sort of bother me, but not to the extent that it did when I was little. Is the movie starts out with a pretty awesome intro. It starts out with Godzilla in the 1954 movie attacking Tokyo. It's like this new version of stock footage, which sounds weird, but it is stock footage from the 54 movie with their new Godzilla inserted, overlaid over the old Godzilla. As a little kid, this would drive me insane because I always never understood how could Godzilla look like he does in this movie? That's not what he looked like in the old original movie. I was always so mad, like, why wouldn't they just use the footage from the original movie? Why did they have to re-record it? They ruined it. That's how I always saw it. They ruined it by using the new design because, like I said last video, I've never liked this design. And I don't know. As a little kid, that just used to drive me nuts, the idea that they would re-record the new Godzilla over the original Godzilla. It just drove me insane. I could not understand why they would do that. Now, I'm older, I get it. They wanted it to look more modern. They wanted it to be in line with their new continuity. They wanted Godzilla's design to be consistent throughout the movie, but I still do prefer that 54 design over this one. So we start out with a modern-ish version of the 54 attack, which is a very cool idea. Now, in this timeline, Godzilla doesn't die. At least from what I can understand, he never dies. So in this timeline, when Ogata, Emiko, and Serizawa sit down to have a conversation about using the oxygen destroyer, Serizawa refuses and does not use the weapon, and so therefore Godzilla is never killed off in this timeline. And that is a pretty interesting idea in and of itself. I would actually like to see a movie set in a universe with those original characters where Serizawa doesn't use the oxygen destroyer. That'd be a super interesting universe to have a story take place in. So Godzilla doesn't die in this universe, and he's just around, and he frequently attacks Japan since then. So in 1966, he attacks some nuclear power plant. I really like how each time we cut to, we do a time skip and we're seeing Godzilla's destruction, we get more and more color every time. So it's like we start out in black and white, now we have some slight color, and it just does that every time we jump, which is a really interesting thing that they do. So it turns out Godzilla's been attacking nuclear power plants all across Japan, so Japan gives up their nuclear energy. They also have recently moved their capital to Osaka. Now Japan relies on dams and solar energy, but they're in an energy crisis, so Japan starts using plasma-powered energy, but Godzilla soon attacks Osaka because, I guess in this continuity, he does not like energy, so he goes after the plasma energy. The JSDF try to stop him, but they don't really do a great job. It's just like 12 dudes with some rocket launchers. Now, Godzilla in this movie, I would say, is both weaker and stronger than usual. Somehow, he survives a black hole being shot point blank at him, but at the same time, he also is heavily affected by military weapons such as just standard rocket launchers in this movie, which is very interesting. The fact that I don't understand how this Godzilla could be weak enough to be injured by these rocket launchers or be annoyed by them, whereas usually he'd just walk it off without even noticing, and at the same time he's strong enough to survive a black hole. That doesn't make too much sense to me. So the special effects in this movie are pretty great. There are some shots that are incredibly laughable, especially towards the end of the movie during the final battle. I feel like the special effects budget did not go to the ending, 30 minutes of this movie. It went everywhere else. So it just becomes really noticeable when all of a sudden the special effects just aren't as good as they were in this opening sequence. And we also have a new composer for this movie. Her name is Michiru Oshima, and she is generally considered by fans of Godzilla to be the second big Godzilla composer. She is second to Ifukube. Now, in my personal opinion, Masaru Sato comes before her, but that's just because I always like his crazy music style. And she does kind of have something similar to what he has, although she has a lot more of a Ifukube feel to her music with a lot heavier bass and brass, but she still uses the same type of percussion and the same kind of chord progression as Masaru Sato used. She's also our main composer for the Millennium Era of Godzilla, and I do take back what I said. I feel like last video I was just kind of salty that I had to watch this movie, and so I was bagging on the music in this movie. Definitely take that back. The music in this movie and the music in all of her movies, which is Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, she does not do GMK, she does Godzilla against Mechagodzilla and Godzilla Tokyo SOS. The music in all of those movies are fantastic. She does such a great job, and Godzilla's new theme is super awesome. This scene is done with some proper suspense, which really gives it a great feel and sets up potentially a good movie. This has the same sort of syndrome as I felt 98 did. Amazing setup, not that great payoff. So this movie, this first scene, just sets the bar so high with how good the movie's going to be. With great suspense, the music is just awesome and slow, the build-up is incredible. It's done very, very well. And also, this movie does something that I hate in Godzilla movies, but at the same time, it does it right. This movie, as well as Godzilla 2000, I definitely don't think have too much of a problem showing Godzilla right off the bat. Both movies kind of start out with the Godzilla attack sequence, but neither movie, I feel like, drags on as a result of it in the way that Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 did. Godzilla attacks an energy facility and kills a soldier who's the superior of our main character Tashimura. We cut to 2001 when an engineer named Kudo is taken by Tashimura to work for the G-Graspers. Now the G-Graspers are this continuity's version of G-Force, which is the task force designed to take down Godzilla. The plan is to shoot a black hole at Godzilla and suck him straight into it. That's just the G-Graspers' plan. It's kind of far-fetched, but I mean, it's a cool idea. So they will attack him from space, which is why Kudo's all excited. He's like, oh, this is groundbreaking. So he joins in the project and helps out the G-Graspers in creating a miniature black hole. He specializes in miniature technology. Now, the thing with this movie that really gets me upset is the fact that this movie would have been an amazing solo Godzilla movie. The first scene of this movie shows straight up that this movie could have been an awesome solo movie for Godzilla. He would have been very menacing, and it would have just been, if they had stuck to the same general plot, very, very intimidating. This would have been a great movie. However, they had to insert Megaguirus in here, and everything that I dislike about the movie comes from Megaguirus. I just think he's a weak villain and takes away from the really interesting stuff in the movie. If I was going to remake this movie, I would entirely cut out Megaguirus and his storyline, and I would leave the whole movie to be about these people trying to shoot a black hole at Godzilla to devour him because he's too strong. There's nothing else they can do. Godzilla is just wiping out cities left and right. I really like the idea of what if Godzilla was the reason that Tokyo flooded later on in the movie. There's so much that you could do with this, whole solo with this movie if you just took out Megaguirus and gave everything to Godzilla. It would also be much more intimidating that way. And also, this movie has a very odd shift in tone where it starts out pretty serious, and then as the movie goes on, it becomes very campy until the final fight just seems like it came straight out of a late Showa movie. Godzilla starts moving around in the ocean and freaking everybody out. 3 months later, a young boy who, for all you Brandon Tenold Mystery Science Theater fans out there, we're just gonna call Kenny, runs off looking for bugs, I guess. I guess that's a thing he does because, what else are you going to do in your free time? You can hang out with friends, or you could go look for bugs in the woods. So he finds Kudo and the G-Graspers testing out their black hole device. It works, but leaves a temporary wormhole, or at least we're led to believe it's temporary. It's seen in the movie a lot longer. It's seen in the movie after we see it dissipate, so I'm not totally sure what to make of it. And also, does that mean that there's potential for multiple wormholes to be in this universe? Because they test this black hole device 3 times in the movie. So I'm wondering if there's multiple wormholes just floating around in this universe that are just these big gateways to another dimension. It's an interesting idea that they never do anything with. So the military catch Kenny, and he has all kinds of sexist to Tashimori, asking her why a girl would be fighting Godzilla. Because girls can't do anything brave. They're girls. A huge human-sized insect flies out of the wormhole and lays an egg where Kenny can just find it, I guess. Just kind of like puts it in the dirt, and he runs outside and he finds it straight away, and then he just takes it back, and now he's got himself an egg. Which also, he moves houses, and he takes the egg with him. Like, what? So he moves houses, takes the egg with him, and then he's afraid of the egg because it starts sliming everywhere, so he just throws it away. He throws it down the sewer. I don't even know. So also, if I guess Meganula is what laid the egg. If these Meganula are smart enough to be like, we're gonna inhabit this planet, wouldn't they also be smart enough to know that they have to lay their egg in water? Because the Meganula we see lays its egg in the dirt, Kenny finds it and drops it in the sewer, which is the only reason it has the ability to turn into a Meganeuron. So I don't know. He throws it in the sewer, and Kudo makes Tashimura some sort of transmitting bullet. That's one of the cool aspects of this movie. The egg divides into something. Originally I thought it divided into multiple eggs, but it doesn't. It just kind of like pieces fall off of it, and it divides into something in the sewer. It's a really weird scene that they never explain. The sewers start leaking all over the city. Again, that's not quite explained, presumably because of water displacement, because there's been so many Meganulas or Meganeuron eggs being laid inside of the sewers that the water level rises to that extent, I guess. A teen is killed by a large insect, and this insect is revealed later on to be the Meganeuron. The Meganeuron kills his girlfriend before evolving and flying away. If you're like, the Meganeuron, that name sounds familiar, that's because the Meganeuron is a throwback to the original Rodan movie. In the original Rodan, Meganeuron is what Rodan fed on. It is those little bugs that Rodan was eating that were killing all the miners at the start of the movie. That is what a Meganeuron is, and that's what the main antagonist of this movie is. Sort of. I guess Godzilla is, but the Meganeuron turned into Megaguirus, and he's the one in the title who Godzilla's fighting, and really, Godzilla is the bad guy in this movie, and the Meganeuron just kind of shows up and is also trying to be the bad guy and take the spotlight away from Godzilla. Again, why would they do this? This was a perfect solo Godzilla movie, and they ruined it by trying to insert another villain in here. You don't have two villains in the same movie. It just gets distracting. I don't know. I really hate it. And no, I don't consider Godzilla 2000 to be the villain. He is not a hero, but he's definitely not a villain. He at least saves the Earth, and the line at the end of the movie, we're led to believe that he does it multiple times, so he saved the Earth quite a bit in that timeline. So I don't totally consider that Godzilla to be the villain. I consider him to be just kind of one of those checks and balances out there in the universe. Same thing with the Heisei era. I definitely consider Godzilla to be the anti-hero throughout all of those. I don't care what anyone has to say. That's just my opinion. Tashimori tells Kenny that she is continuing her commander's legacy by fighting Godzilla, and that's why she fights Godzilla, because I guess he got her number or something, so he can call her up anytime he needs to chat. So Kenny discovers that the insect is a Meganula, the big flying one. Tashimori flies a jet out to intercept Godzilla, who is swimming around in the ocean. A Meganula dead body is spotted near Godzilla, so they're investigating the Meganula's body in the water, and it's kind of a cool scene to see them ride up on this big dead insect carcass and start investigating in the water. And just when that's all happening, just then Godzilla rises up out of the water. He rises to the water surface, which is really cool but kind of convenient. Why would he show up right then and right there? I don't know, but it's a cool scene because you just see Godzilla's spines come up from around the raft, and then the water pushes them out as Godzilla surfaces. It's a pretty sweet sequence, and then Tashimori rides Godzilla's back, which is awesome. The way she's one of one of the best protagonists from the Millennium era. I don't like her as much as I like some of the other ones, but I definitely think she's a much more likable character than anyone we got last movie. She shoots Godzilla with that tracking beacon that was made for her earlier, and then she gets out of there before the radiation can affect her, or something. I don't know. It's not explained. She just kind of freaks out because some red gauge is going off, and she runs away. Also, and again, we see how weak Godzilla is because his skin is able to be penetrated by this little pistol bullet that just has this tracking dart in it. And it also made me think of kind of a plot hole in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla is, if that Godzilla's skin was so indestructible, how are they able to pierce his skin with their tracking bullet that they put on his neck? Not totally sure, but I don't know if his skin was supposed to be unpierceable. We also know in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla that Yuki was going to shoot a coagulant bullet at Godzilla and kill him, so I'm not totally sure that Godzilla's skin was unpierceable. However, everything else we saw from the Heisei era would suggest us to believe that. Anyways, I guess you can pierce this Godzilla's skin with a little pistol bullet, and after that happens, he can tank a black hole, I guess. The SGS Search Godzilla system tracks Godzilla through the ocean. There's a lot less poor, really bad CGI in this movie, and a lot more really mediocre CGI, not necessarily PS1 levels like last time, but more like PS2 levels. But there's not as much bad CGI in here, or the CGI in here isn't as noticeably bad most of the time. At least on Godzilla anyways. These swimming scenes are actually really well handled. During all this, Kudo finishes the Dimension Tide, which is an awesome name. That is what they named the black hole device. So the Dimension Tide is launched into space. I think there's some NASA stock footage in here. I can't tell what it is, but it's definitely stock footage. It turns out that the Meganula live in swarms, which freaks everybody out, and they're extremely aggressive. The water tables under Tokyo rise to the level where the city is entirely flooded. I'm talking big built like houses underwater, skyscrapers halfway flooded. I don't know where all this water came from. The water tables under Tokyo have risen. That's all they say. What does that mean? Does that mean that, because earlier the sewers were flooding, and we know that was because presumably the Megaguirus had so much eggs down there that the water displacement rose to the point where the water was coming out of the sewer. But now what are we to believe? There's nothing that I can explain that with. It's a cool idea. I would have liked if, like, Godzilla creates a huge tsunami and floods the city, kind of the 2014 aspect, what we saw with Godzilla coming on land, in a great solo Godzilla movie. Megaguirus is in here, and it's somehow his fault that the water tables have risen. I guess. I don't know. They don't explain it. And if they do, and I'm just an idiot and somehow didn't read that, because I am, for once, finally being able to review a Japanese Godzilla movie again, I did read the subtitles. If they just didn't explain it in the subtitles, or they did and I didn't see it, please tell me, because I have no idea how that happens. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I guess Tokyo's turned into a mass Meganula nest, or Meganeuron nest, whatever you want to call them. Godzilla is found sleeping in the ocean. The plan is to let Godzilla make landfall on a small island near Japan and deploy the Dimension Tide on him. It seems like the military is pretty effective on Godzilla in this movie, as they are able to lead him on shore by firing jet missiles at him and shooting him with all sorts of different machine gun weapons. And he seems pretty affected by him too. Like, throughout the whole movie, anytime he gets hit by one of these things, he's looking around for where it's coming from. It really feels like it hurts him. So they are able to lure Godzilla on the island. During all this, the JSDF discover thousands of Meganula. Godzilla lands on the island, and soon the Meganula from Tokyo fly away, and they attack Godzilla, and the Meganula start to take his DNA and fly away. It's really cool to see Godzilla this annoyed, however, the way it's filmed is kind of annoying. And it's funny because he's just annoyed by insects. Like, you see him picking them off him and throwing them on the ground. He's shooting them with the atomic breath, just trying to get them off of him, just trying to kill them all. It's an awesome, it's hilarious to see Godzilla this, annoyed with something that's attacking him. However, I don't really like all the angles of, his face smashing into rocks. It just looks weird. I'd like it if it was filmed a little different, or, the way he shakes his head's all awkward. There's a funny scene when he starts using his tail as a fly swatter to swat him off his back. And then there's a really cool part when all the Meganula land on his dorsal fins, and so he lights him up and starts frying him on his back. I really like this Godzilla's personality, where he just seems over it. He's just done. He's annoyed with everything. It's awesome. It's hilarious. So the Dimension Tide goes off. It's all over the place because the Meganula throw off the tracking, I guess, or at least that's what it said, even though we specifically see it lock onto Godzilla before it fires. Anyways, they fire the Dimension Tide. The black hole just, it devours everything, except apparently Godzilla just tanks it, and he's not affected by it somehow. He's covered in rocks or whatever, but then he just quickly walks it off. This whole sequence, like I said, is filmed weird, with Godzilla's shaking his head around, and he also has a really odd face. It's around this point in the movie when I noticed. I don't know if they did something different with his face. I know they did with his design this movie, but with his face sculpt itself, I don't know if they did anything different with it, but it just looks awkward compared to last movie. Maybe it's because it's filmed in daytime more, or maybe it's just that this movie has more close-up shots of his face to make me realize. The Meganula start feeding one big supreme Meganeuron that they have deemed the Queen Meganeuron. The Meganula die as the Megaguirus is born. Megaguirus looks awesome. He looks like a super, crazy version of the Meganula. Just looks absolutely awesome. I'd really like to see a fight in a movie between the Meganeuron, the Meganeuron. I'd really like to see a fight in a movie between the Megaguirus and Batra. That would just be an awesome fight. It feels a bit redundant, though, because we also saw a lot of the stuff that happens here with the Megaguirus landing on a building and destroying a city with these big shockwaves. We saw that stuff with Orga, and this whole idea of, these creatures combining to form one big creature. We saw that with Destroya, and then we also saw the design similar with Batra, so it feels a little bit redundant of all those guys. Now, Godzilla heads for Japan. Kenny evacuates. I think this is the last time we see him. And it's funny where they mention he evacuates from Minato Ku. I don't know what that is. What city that is. Miratoa-ku, something like that, and Shinagawa-ku, and I don't know what ku means, but Shinagawa, Shinagawa is the city where the second form of Shin Godzilla, or technically third form of Shin Godzilla, attacks in Shin Godzilla, so I thought that was funny. Plus it has KU written after it, meaning it's Shinagawa-ku, almost Shinagawa-kun. Oh, it's like they foreshadowed everything. They knew the future. Oh, man. But I just thought that was funny, so I wrote it down. So Godzilla heads for Tokyo. Megaguirus attacks Godzilla to try and take Tokyo as its territory. There's a lot of weird motion blur in this movie, and anytime you're seeing the movie from the Megaguirus perspective, like it's filmed from what it's seeing, everything's really frame ratey and awkward, and I hate it. So it's a super clunky fight, a lot of just clashing into each other, and it looks really weird. A lot of the times the Megaguirus is just clearly like they took a picture of the suit in front of a green screen and have inserted it into the movie and are just dragging it around screen, attacking the Godzilla suit with it. Looks really cheap, and I hate it. This is what I'm talking about. By the end of the movie, all that great special effects from the start of the movie, it's all gone. It's all just clunky and goofy. So there's way too many close-up shots of Godzilla, and they last way too long. There's way too much shaky cam throughout this fight. Megaguirus, getting back into like the actual plot, what's happening in the battle, Megaguirus causes everything technical to crash, meaning like he creates such a high frequency with the buzz of his wings that no technology can be used, and it drops Dimension Tide out of orbit. Godzilla looks shocked and dumb far too often during this fight. He'll have these like crazy expressions, and he'll be looking around all silly, and then like when he's being dragged around, he's waving his arms all crazy, and he looks stupid. I don't like it. I don't like how Godzilla looks really cool at the beginning of this movie, like he's gonna be like down to business, and then we see him just like annoyed, but by the end of the movie he's just like a bumbling idiot at this point. The fight music also kind of sucks. I know I praised the music earlier, but I really dislike this fight music. It sounds like something you'd hear in like Super Smash Bros. It just doesn't sound like Godzilla music. The sets look incredibly fake at this point in the movie, and there's a lot of silly Godzilla movements, like I said, with this weird... I can't stress this enough. His weird head shaking and movements look really dumb. He also does this super awkward run dodge move, and it looks bad. Megaguirus' arm is cut off by Godzilla's dorsal fin, which is a cool utilization of Godzilla's dorsal fins. Godzilla's really intelligent in this movie for the most part, which is really... it's interesting, and I quite like it. Godzilla also utilizes his tail a lot in this movie. There's, like I said earlier, that point when he's fly swatting these Megaguirus or Meganula off his back, and then there's this point when Megaguirus flies up at him, and he catches Megaguirus' tail with his tail, and then throws Megaguirus into a building using only his tail. It's really cool. There's this awkward jump tackle, which Cinemassacre seemed to like, but I've always hated. And then there's a lot of weird visuals showing, like, just random stuff on Kudo's computer. He has like this weird nurse program that literally you can watch it visually delete viruses, which is dumb. I don't like that idea. Megaguirus has sucked out so much of Godzilla's atomic energy by inserting his tail spike right into Godzilla's, he sticks it right in Godzilla's groin multiple times and sucks out all his atomic energy. So then there's this point when Megaguirus generates an atomic blast, which is pretty cool the way that, he's absorbed so much radiation by this point that he just fires it all out at once. But it hurts Godzilla pretty badly. There's a scene where Godzilla gets hit by it and he stands there still motionless before he falls over. Godzilla stands up and is ready to fight, and there's this cool-ish mislead, and then it gets really dumb, where Megaguirus flies at full speed at Godzilla, and it looks like he stabs Godzilla right in the brain with his tail spike, and you think Godzilla's dead. And Godzilla's just standing there motionless, and then it just does freeze frame for some odd reason. And then it slow-mo pans around, which was really awkward, and you find out that Godzilla caught the tail, he got the blade in his mouth, he bites down on it, also in slow-mo, destroying it. Really, it's filmed very awkwardly. Godzilla uses his atomic breath to kill Megaguirus in one shot. This is the first shot Godzilla's landed on Megaguirus with his atomic breath, to my knowledge. And then there's lots of really bad special effects when the Dimension Tide is falling out of space. There's one shot that looks like it straight up came out of the Mystery Science Theater 3000 intro. That's how cheesy they look. and it just falls out of space. Turns out the reason Godzilla is attacking the city in the first place is because the leader, the guy in charge of the G-Grazers, continued energy research with plasma after Godzilla's attack in the 90s, leading to Godzilla attacking now because Godzilla hates non-nuclear and nuclear energy sources. The Dimension Tide, while falling out of orbit, fires at Tashimori, who set up the beacon on her so that she'd fly into Godzilla, and then Dimension Tide would go off. She flies this big, huge jet right at Godzilla, ejects last second, flies away. The Dimension Tide goes off, and a black hole sucks Godzilla completely up. He is completely erased off the face of the Earth. Now, if you remember earlier, there would technically be a wormhole there, and on that island that they shot it off earlier at, so I'm wondering what those wormholes are doing there. Of course, we never got a sequel to this movie, probably a good thing. But it is very, interesting to think about the fact that in this universe there are just wormholes floating around Tokyo. So like I said, Godzilla is eaten by Dimension Tide, and then we get some scenes after that. So the movie should have ended with this great shot of Tashimori looking at the destruction. Godzilla's gone. It's a personal victory for her, and then the movie just continues. Like, that would have been where I would have ended it. But the movie continues, and there's just these, everyone's doing well after the time skip, I guess. Kudo has a broken arm still because earlier in the movie Megaguirus knocked a building on him and he broke his arm during all that. But there's this really weird WTF freeze frame ending where Kudo and Tashimori are flirting with each other, and she accidentally hits him right in the broken arm, and he goes, "Hey, that's my broken arm." And then she's like, "Oh my, I'm sorry," and it just freeze frames on her. And it just stays like that, and the ending credits start rolling over this freeze frame. And there's no way for me to describe how awkward this ending is. You just have to watch it, because she literally, "I'm sorry," ends. Cuts her off right after she says that. Just freeze frame, ending credits roll. What? It's so bad. I hate it. This is honestly the worst ending for a Godzilla movie I've ever seen. It's so bad. It's so cheesy. And there's this mislead setup too, because they're there's been seismic activity, potentially Godzilla. I don't know. Ha 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 ha. Well, I guess we'll never know because GMK is next, thank God. Thank God they took it to that place because that movie is awesome. So the human stuff in this movie, it's okay. It's pretty generic for the era. We have a lot of great female leads in this Millennium era, but they all have some sort of guilt or whatever. They got this guy killed or something. They're trying to be military people. I don't know. We got a lot of this stuff. It's the same thing we see throughout the rest of the Millennium era, minus Final Wars and the GMK, and I guess technically Godzilla 2000. So the kaiju stuff in this movie, it's Godzilla's stuff is great. Godzilla is great in this movie. However, everything else, the Megaguirus, the Meganulon, the Meganura, I'm getting all the names confused. All that stuff, everything with Megaguirus sucks. Godzilla's stuff, though, it's awesome. It's the best part of this movie. It's the biggest and only saving grace. The special effects, they're okay. Some shots in this movie are just so bad and so laughable that I can't be yes, this movie has great special effects like I could last time. So the music in this movie, like I said, it's composed by Michiru Oshima. She does a great job. She really just great music in this movie. Overall, I don't like Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. This honestly isn't going to be one that I watch a lot in my life. This one's just going to be one of those ones that I let sit for a couple of years, then I can go back to it every once in a while and be sort of semi-surprised at how it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Honestly, I just never remembered even one good thing about this movie as a little kid, so it caught me off guard. The one thing about this movie that I can never forgive is what they do to Godzilla's design. They turn him into a green dinosaur. Alright? He's a red fire-breathing, green dinosaur with purple dorsal fins. The green and purple look terrible on Godzilla. This isn't Hanna-Barbera. We don't need that. It looks ridiculous. Put him back into gray tone, black. It looks good when he's gray or black or brown. He does not look good when he's green. He never did. I never even thought Junior looked that cool when he was green. Junior's cool, don't get me wrong, but he didn't even look that great when he was green. I don't like the green on Godzilla. It just looks too generic, cartoony dinosaur. I hate it. I never like my Godzilla's green. Hanna-Barbera sucks and it's green. It sucks. And anytime I see a green Godzilla, that's what I'm thinking of, is like that level of cheese. So, anyways, 6.5 out of 10. This movie's not the worst movie in the series, but it's definitely not the best. It's kind of bad. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time. D-Man, out. What's up, everybody? D-Man back. Welcome to the brand. Oh, that was very weird. Welcome to the brand new video. Welcome to a brand new video. Today we're doing Godzilla-Thon episode 29. Today we're going to be doing 2001's GMK, aka Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters, All Out Attack. So clearly I couldn't fit the full title on the title card. Now could I? It's just too long. Also, I was gonna put a normal Godzilla on the title, just like a full body of him, so that he would also be there standing next to himself biting Ghidorah, but I just couldn't fit him in anywhere, so I just had to leave it how it is. But it looks fine. I think it looks fine. So let's talk about what I think is genuinely one of the best Godzilla movies ever made. Right after we talk about Godzilla vs Megaguirus some more, so I had a review of that last week. If you want, you can go check it out. So last week I talked about the fact that I didn't really like that movie, right? I thought it was okay-ish. I just didn't really like it. The longer it sat with me, the more I kind of disliked it. And the only reason I'm bringing it back up is because some of you guys pointed out, wait a minute, you forgot to mention one key thing, the after credits scene. And I was like, I did not know there was an after credits scene. So I sat down today, watched it. Yeah, there is an after credits scene, so I'll briefly mention it here. It sucks. You got Kenny, he looks out the window, you don't even see it, you just hear Godzilla's roar, and everything's shaking around him and falling over, and he's all like, oh my god, this is terrible. I hated his character. He got everyone killed. He was the bad guy of the movie, alright? Not a Kenny fan, but he probably got what was coming to him because Godzilla probably killed him afterward. I don't know. That's a little dark, D-Man. I don't care about that movie. Okay, so yeah, there's an after credit scene. I guess Godzilla somehow escaped a black hole, which is, impossible. So I guess he did that. But let's move on from that and talk about what I think might be the best Millennium movie ever. I definitely will have to watch the next few for Godzilla-Thon, and I will consider it throughout all of them. I can almost guarantee right now that I do not enjoy the next two more than this movie. Maybe Final Wars. I am a sucker for Final Wars, but I'm not real big on the Mechagodzilla movies, so we'll just have to see. But this movie, man, it's fantastic. So it starts out, and this is one of those ones that gets me right away. Great soundtrack. The music right off the bat gets me all excited. It's awesome. Starts with a recap of what we know is set in this universe. So it's like a military meeting, and they're kind of going over their history, which serves as great exposition for us to tell us what universe this story takes place in. This takes place in a brand new continuity, and it is very different. This is a very, very different movie from all the other movies we've seen in this, basically in the franchise so far. This is the most different version of Godzilla we have ever seen up till Shin Godzilla, and maybe even 98. I definitely think, yeah, I would be willing to say this Godzilla is more different than 98. It's more faithful to the original character, but it's more different than the 98 Godzilla. So now we know this movie takes place in a world where the original Godzilla from 1954 did in fact happen. So Godzilla, all those events of the 54 movie, that's already happened. Godzilla's already dead. It also takes place in a universe where the 98 movie is canon, which is kind of weird to think about it, because in that movie they treat it as the first time a giant monster ever showed up, because in that movie's continuity it is the first time a giant monster ever showed up, but in this movie's continuity it's not the first time, and there was a Godzilla in 54 that is just not mentioned during the events of the 98 movie. That's where the legend of Godzilla would presumably come from that movie, which is kind of cool to think about. And obviously Obviously, none of this is canon for the 98 movie. This is all just in GMK's canon. Godzilla attacks, Zilla attacks New York in 1998. GMK poked some fun at that, saying that that wasn't really Godzilla that attacked the US, which was them making fun of how not Godzilla our Godzilla was. So now that the plot's kicked off, we find out that a nuclear sub has gone missing. It's an American nuclear sub. It has gone missing, and the Americans and Japanese set out to find it. The Japanese actually are the ones who wind up spotting the destroyed sub, and it's just completely demolished. When one of the guys is there in his submarine, he spots Godzilla swimming around. He only spots the dorsal fins. It's awesome. This low-budget news crew is filming a docudrama in the mountains, and they explain they want to make a Godzilla exploitation film in a sense. They want to exploit the history of Japan with Godzilla attacking and make that area a big tourist attraction by making it out like Godzilla, attacked that area or whatever, so that people would want to go visit and see the legend of Godzilla. That night, an elderly couple, which one of the guys is the one who owns the area that is making the Godzilla exploitation film, where they're filming in. He owns the filming location. He and his wife, presumably, are harassed by this motorcycle gang who wind up destroying some of their property. They destroy this little idol, it's like a little rock statue. The motorcycle crew is killed in the tunnel when it collapses on them, and this is caused by a subterranean monster. Yeah, I know, I ripped that title straight from Frankenstein Conquers the World, didn't I? That awakened during an earlier earthquake when everyone was up in the mountains filming the docudrama. Yuri, our main protagonist, claims no one will listen to her because she's a woman, which kind of feels very out of nowhere, which, I'm not here to bag on it and be like, screw progressiveness. That is definitely not what I'm here to do. I'm just saying it comes out of nowhere in this movie, and it literally has no bearing on the plot. At least when Honda would do it, he would always make it that it would have a bearing on the plot. You watch the original 54 movie, and he always has the female characters be important characters. That's his thing. He's really great with female characters, and he has that progressiveness for a reason. In this movie, she's just complains about it. Luckily, they don't spend too much time on it, but that kind of feels like her character's full motivation through the movie is that she's like, no one treats me normally, which is not true. She has loads of people that listen to her specifically, but I get what they're trying to do here. They're trying to make it more like a Honda film and incorporate all his sorts of allegory. I just don't think that this one necessarily lands because they don't do anything interesting with it. I also just find it funny because, like I said, it totally comes completely out of nowhere. She gets drunk and starts complaining about, I wish I was a man. I don't know why I made such a big deal out of it. I just found it funny and wanted to make fun of it. So a friend of hers gives her this book dealing with 3 guardian monsters. And this is the big idea of the movie. This is really the thing that drives the lore of this movie and takes it in such a wild and fascinating direction. So this book about 3 guardian monsters. Some teens rob a store and trespass in Japan. They're in this lake area, and they destroy the same idol. Well, not technically not the same idol as the motorcycle gang, but it's the same type of idol. They destroy the same type of idol as the motorcycle gang, and basically they a whole bunch of guys get on a boat and a girl, and they head out in the water, basically to kill this dog that they stuffed in a box. They put some weights in the box, and then they plan to drown the dog in the box, which is, super dark. And I never understood any of this stuff as a little kid. I don't even think I would have thought about the fact that you hear the dog barking and whining when they're drifting it out into the lake. I never thought about a lot of this stuff in this movie, and really it's a very dark movie when you watch it with an adult lens, and, when you watch it when you're older, I should say. Suddenly, the Mothra larva erupts from the water, and it's actually not until much, much, much later in the movie that Mothra is named, but we all know it's Mothra. Finally, Mothra's larva rises up out of the water, killing them, knocking the dog into the water. Somehow it survives overnight, I guess, because we see it later on and it's fine. We see the police rescuing it. And then all the teens on shore are also killed when the Mothra larva surfaces and just kind of runs them over. Takeda takes Yuri home to her father, who's a military general, and Nothing more to say about that scene. Everyone is joking around and not taking Godzilla very seriously at this military conference, which kind of feels out of place considering these are all people who would have been alive during Godzilla's attack in 54. But as it's brought up in this movie, a lot of people decided to move on, forget the past, and make fun of it instead of facing the realities of their world, which we do see often in the real world as well. An old man who keeps showing up throughout the movie is arrested. He's played by a veteran Godzilla actor, most notably Shinpei from All Monsters Attack, which is fitting because now he's in Giant Monsters All Out Attack, otherwise known as that weird toy shop guy from Godzilla's Revenge. So he's in this movie. He plays this very mysterious character who we actually know nothing about, because you think you know who he is, and then one of the very last lines of the movie, they throw a curveball at you, and it turns out that he's not this old professor that you think he is throughout the whole movie. In fact, he is this spirit person, and we don't know too much about him other than that he's a spirit person. This movie is super crazy with its lore. It's a very spiritual, where most Godzillas aren't. So it's very interesting for that reason. I love it. So this dude basically warns everyone about what's going on. He says Godzilla's about to wake up. You guys be ready because there's a fight coming. And the big push that he tries to make is that everyone needs to wake up Ghidorah. In this movie, the legend of Ghidorah goes like this. Ghidorah is one of 3 guardian monsters, like I said about that book earlier. He is an 8-headed dragon, not a 3-headed dragon, and he is somewhere between 10,000 to 1,000 years old. So this is the little bit confusing part. So technically, he's super, super, super old, but they never specify how old he is. We know they keep calling him throughout the movie the 1,000-year-old dragon, but we know he's at least 2,000 years old. And then we also know that he'll become a full-grown dragon at 10,000 years old. So it's kind of confusing with all the numbers that they throw around. They don't totally match up. Basically, all that you need to know is that Ghidorah is a dragon that will grow 8 heads if he lives 10,000 years. However, because he has only lived 2,000 years, he is not a full-grown and therefore only has 3 heads. He is an adolescent and not very tall compared to what he will be, and he's not very powerful to what he should be. A family making fun of Godzilla and Odo Island and what they had to go through in the first movie is killed by Godzilla during a typhoon, which is fantastic. Godzilla's first appearance in this movie, you hardly see Godzilla, you only see his foot. Exactly a throwback to the original 54 movie. It happens during a typhoon, exactly like the 54 movie, on an island. I think the island, maybe in the English dub, is actually stated to be Odo Island. So it's a fantastic way to re-tie this movie back to the old movie, and they do a great job making Godzilla, They do a great job tying this one back to the original. That's what I want to say. It turns out Godzilla was reincarnated, so alright, this is the part where we really take a nosedive into this crazy mythology of this movie. So Godzilla was reincarnated by the souls of the dead from World War II. Godzilla is back to remind people of the pain of the past, so he has a motive this time, and he's destroying things for a reason. The idols that everyone keeps breaking are the only things keeping the guardian monsters awake, and as they are destroyed, the guardian monsters will wake up. There's at one point when a man is trying to hang himself, totally didn't get what that was about as a kid. He stands on one of these idols, the ground beneath him breaks, and he doesn't get to hang himself. The tie he's holding on to in the branch, it just snaps and he falls down this big pit. He falls down this pit, he breaks this idol, sort of, he chips part of it, and it reveals Ghidorah. This is where we find out that Godzilla's rampage, why he's back destroying Japan, or why he will come back to destroy Japan, is all because he is fueled by not the Japanese soldiers, but the rage of those who were killed by the Japanese soldiers in the 1940s. Super interesting, which is also very weird if you think about it. So Godzilla is basically a culmination of the Americans who died as a result of the Japanese who died as a result of the Americans, the innocents who died as a result of both, and then those who were killed by the Japanese in war crimes, like the Chinese and everything like that. Very, very interesting. I wish we could see some more inner conflict with Godzilla, where you could see like the American spirits trying to take over, or the Japanese spirits taking over, so that you could see a little bit more of that conflict going on within Godzilla. All we really know is that Godzilla was brought back to life in order to remind people of what happened in the past by the Japanese soldiers, and now he is enraged by those who were killed by the Japanese soldiers, and that's why he's so destructive and evil. But is it really evil at that point? Because then it's more of revenge than evil, so it's an interesting debate you could bring up. Admiral Tachibana reveals that he was one of the people in the 1954 attack. His character wasn't in the original 54 movie, but he was someone in that situation, because yes, there were a lot of people that would have been alive during that time period that are still alive now. So it's cool to see that we have a character who was alive back then. Now it's 50 years later. And he's a military general who hates Godzilla as a result of what he went through. We find out that Godzilla killed his parents, which is a cool flashback scene. Sadly, we don't get to see any Godzilla during that flashback scene. That would have been pretty sweet. Especially because this Godzilla design is very reminiscent of the Showa designs. It basically throws everything out that they did with the redesigns from the Millennium era, except for the longer dorsal fins. And they basically go back to the Showa movies, to the 54 movie, and then do minor tweaks. Take away Godzilla's ears. I think, maybe he has ears. I think they take away his ears and they kind of arch his back a little more. And then they turn him from gray, they turn him black. So, and they also white out the eyes. I tried to do that with my character on the title card, but it just looked weird, so I had to put pupils in. But they white out the eyes of Godzilla to make him very, almost soulless, which is funny because of how many souls he has within him. So it's like he's soulless looking, but really he's soulful, because he's full of souls. Get it? Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. Baragon, now finally named in the movie, is causing earthquakes all underground through Japan. He surfaces and destroys a police station. Basically, he releases Shinpei from Godzilla's Revenge. He releases him from jail. Baragon moves near Mount Fuji. Godzilla surfaces. It's a great scene. Godzilla surfaces, and you just see how huge he is. There's massive scale in this movie. The old man goes to wake up Ghidorah, who was frozen in ice. Godzilla kills off the only survivor from his attack during the typhoon earlier, which is freaking an amazing parallel that they don't even, they don't have to call it out. This is just such a hidden reference that it's awesome. It's like something that you would see nowadays, where in the original Godzilla movie, you have Shinkichi's brother, who is on a ship that's attacked by Godzilla. Later on, he's the only one who has seen Godzilla, and he's killed during the typhoon by Godzilla. This girl is the only one who's seen Godzilla during the typhoon, and she's killed by Godzilla during his surface later on. It's a great parallel that those who see Godzilla usually don't live to tell the tale, and if you have seen him, you're basically cursed from that point on out. It's awesome. I love that reference. It's so cool, and it's worked in there great. Also, this is one of the only Godzilla movies that I can think of where you actually see people dying as a result of Godzilla. Like you don't, it doesn't dance around it. It shows you people getting stepped on. You see Godzilla's tail smash this building right where she is. You know she's there because you just saw her perspective of it. You see people dying in this movie. I can only think of, you see a little bit of that in Shin Godzilla, a little bit of that in the 54 movie. You don't see that in, I don't think, any other movie. Maybe 84, I don't remember. But you don't see that a lot. That's what I'm trying to say. The atomic breath in this movie is so powerful. It's in fact so powerful that it leaves behind a mushroom cloud after Godzilla uses it, another great parallel to the roots of Godzilla in the atomic bomb. Godzilla and Baragon are on a beeline towards each other, and every time someone disrespects a kaiju or the past in this movie, they wind up dead, as seen when some people are taking pictures of Baragon, calling him all cute, and then Godzilla shows up behind a freaking mountain, bursting through it and killing them. It was one of those big takeaways I had as a kid. It was like, Godzilla has the atomic breath, he fights other monsters, and he is big enough to plow through a mountain. Like, that's what I always thought of. So anytime I saw the mountains, I always thought Godzilla's bigger than that. Now, obviously, I know otherwise, but back then, I was always like, that's the coolest thing in the world. Godzilla can bust through a mountain. That is awesome. And it also reminds me a lot of that scene from King Kong 1976, when you see Kong, like, he's ripping through this big like banner, this wall that's blocking off like a parking lot or something from that little like show area where he was being displayed in. And they're kind of filmed in the exact same way, so it always reminds me of that. Godzilla and Baragon get into a fight. Baragon gets some good shots in here and there. Like he starts out the fight. Baragon's the one who starts out the fight. He knocks Godzilla over by burrowing under him. He's able to bite Godzilla and kind of swing him around a little bit, but he doesn't do too much. But Godzilla overall just obliterates him, just tanking everything that Baragon has, and then eventually blowing him up, literally obliterating him with the atomic breath, and just Baragon explodes into pieces. So Godzilla's, like I said, his atomic breath is super powerful, or maybe Baragon's just that weak. I choose to think it was the first option. Now, Baragon is toned down from how he was in Frankenstein vs. Baragon. In that movie, he jumped a whole bunch, and he was a formidable foe against Frankenstein, who was a lot faster than Godzilla ever is. Baragon had a heat beam, and he had a whole bunch of abilities that we never saw in the movie, like he could cup his eyes with his ears, and he could use his horn to ram things, and that's actually how he digs, is he'll cup his ears around his face so that his eyes don't get hurt, and then he digs with his horn. I wish we could have seen some more of these abilities in GMK. I know it's a very crowded movie and they didn't want to waste our time with that, but I would just like to see Baragon put up a little bit better of a fight against Godzilla. Ghidorah starts to wake up as Baragon is killed. There's lots of footage of human damage in this movie, a lot of recovery in the hospital, which is also great reference to the 54 movie, great way to bring it back to the roots of Godzilla. This movie, despite being extremely different than the original movie, is also very similar in a lot of ways, just like Shin Godzilla. Who do you think directed Shin Godzilla? Definitely it was someone who worked on GMK. That's what I'm saying. Tokyo is evacuated and Yuri heads out on a bike to get footage of Godzilla. Missiles, I worded this super weird in my notes. Missiles bomb Godzilla. Obviously, they're missiles. But the military jets combat Godzilla. It's a great sequence that really shows how powerful Godzilla is. And there's, like I said, throughout this whole movie, there's just massive scale. All the jets are firing these huge bombs at Godzilla, and he's just not having it. So he shoots them all down with his atomic breath. Ghidorah finally wakes up. Mothra hatches from a cocoon that was floating in a lake. Fantastic Mothra effects. When she finally wakes up, her wings spread out and you watch all the membranes slowly come down. It's so well handled. It turns out that Serizawa's sacrifice was covered up in this timeline, and the people of Japan thought that it was the military who killed Godzilla back in 54, which is why the military generals in this movie are so shocked that Godzilla is just not affected by anything they do. They're like, how is this possible? And then it's finally revealed at this point in the movie, and when one of the generals who knows more than anyone else says, we couldn't even, we didn't even hurt him back in the 50s. That was all one guy who did that. The Mothra twins have a neat little cameo. They're not actually the Mothra twins, but they're two twins who look at Mothra, and it's an obvious reference to the Mothra twins, so I do like that. I would like something like that in Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019, if not the actual Mothra fairies. Also, I think this is the only incarnation of Mothra to date to not feature the Mothra fairies with her. We have Final Wars has them. I do believe Tokyo SOS has them. In fact, I think I know it does. The original obviously has them. Rebirth series has them. And then Godzilla from the 90s has them. Every Show movie has them too. So this is the first and only time, I think, that Mothra is on her own without her fairies. She also doesn't have much of a characterization in this movie, so it's I like Mothra with the fairies, and I like Mothra with the characterization. She doesn't really get anything in this movie, so I'm not a big fan of Mothra in this movie. The effects are fantastic though, and then same with Ghidorah. He has a characterization, I just don't like it. So Tokyo is turned into a war zone with the military basically setting up ambush sites on every street so that if Godzilla shows up, he'll be attacked. Godzilla is about to fight the military when suddenly Mothra shows up and he starts fighting Mothra. Mothra shoots all these projectiles at Godzilla. We've never seen that ability before, and we've never seen it since. It actually really hurts Godzilla, and this is a pretty physical fight with Mothra attacking Godzilla's head quite a bit. Ghidorah shows up. Not only is he super small compared to usual, Ghidorah is actually smaller than Godzilla in this movie, but he's the good guy, which is something I will never forget forgive this movie for. Ghidorah's not supposed to ever be the good guy. I can see if you make him neutral, fine, whatever. But don't make him the good guy. I don't want to see Ghidorah protecting the Earth. I want to see him destroying it. Like, I get that you can't have two bad guys, but they should have picked someone other than Ghidorah, and I know the original plan was to have it be Baragon, Varan, and I believe Anguirus be the ones for this movie. I don't think it was supposed to be Mothra. But I know Varan was supposed to be in Ghidorah's place, and they just thought that it wouldn't have the appeal that way. Personally, I think they should have gone for it. I don't really like Ghidorah's characterization in this movie. He doesn't feel like King Ghidorah to me, and he really doesn't do anything that's that significant that you would have needed Ghidorah to do. He doesn't have anything like that in this movie. Varan has the flight ability. He has the same face sculpt. They did sculpt Ghidorah's face in this movie after Varan. Varan would have been fine in this role. And also, maybe in that version of the movie, Baragon would have had more to do and he would have had his original abilities. So Ghidorah possesses this new electric bite, which we've never seen before, that weakens Godzilla. Ghidorah gets his butt handed to him. He does not put up a fight against Godzilla. He's just thrown around, blasted by the atomic breath. He's killed. There's this great part during Godzilla's fight with Ghidorah when Mothra tries to come up on Godzilla, and Godzilla just swats her out of the air with his tail. It's hilarious. Godzilla sets Mothra on fire. He destroys most of the military after they shoot these super powerful missiles on him that have these drills attached that really hurt him. Then Ghidorah gets a power boost after Mothra is killed because Godzilla killed Mothra and all her energy transfers into Ghidorah, giving him this super ability, turning him into King Ghidorah. And he rises from the dead to fight Godzilla. Yuri is arrested so that she can't get hurt, so she's basically just taken out of the way. Godzilla's hit by a spirit bomb. Ghidorah creates this force field out of electricity. Godzilla fires the atomic breath into it, and Ghidorah just pops that thing right back at him, sending Godzilla flying into the ocean. It bursts a huge cut open on Godzilla's shoulder and his neck. There's a big underwater battle. We only see bits and pieces of it between Godzilla and Ghidorah. Tachibana plans to use this sub with the powerful drill that they shot on the missiles earlier attached to it to drive it into Godzilla in order to kill him. One stray bolt of the atomic breath, just to give you a little bit of how powerful it is enough to destroy an entire bridge, nearly killing Yuri. Ghidorah saves Yuri by roaring in the water, sending this huge bubble air wave up, splashed in the water up, and then is able to catch her when she falls off the bridge. Just now in the movie, this is the only time in the movie, Ghidorah finally uses his lightning breath, which is a classic trademark of the character. Hope they don't wait that long to use it in Godzilla King of the Monsters. So Godzilla is supercharged by Ghidorah's atomic breath. By Ghidorah's lightning breath, it does nothing against Godzilla. He just takes it in. And then Godzilla uses this super atomic breath to blow up Ghidorah. Everything explodes. Probably one of the biggest explosions we've seen in a Godzilla movie. It's so big that it dwarfs Godzilla. It's just a massive bomb that goes off when Godzilla blows up Ghidorah. All the guardian monsters reveal themselves in spirit form. Tachibana is able to kill Godzilla by by driving the submarine into Godzilla's mouth and driving it out of the wound in Godzilla's shoulder. This does something where Godzilla, the next morning, tries to use his atomic breath and it fires out of his shoulder every time he tries to use it because it can't make it up out of his chest into his mouth. Even though you see it illuminate his mouth, it comes out of his shoulder because it has nowhere to come. It builds up in the chest and it has nowhere to go other than that hole. And it winds up disintegrating Godzilla somehow. So Tachibana gets away, Godzilla's dead, the people of Japan are reminded of Godzilla once more, but Godzilla's still alive, just to remind everybody that they really need to stay in check, otherwise he'll attack again. And by still alive, I mean he is reduced to literally nothing but a heart, and it's still beating, and it's still going to regenerate, presumably, back into Godzilla. Awesome. Godzilla's unkillable. I love this incarnation. Glad we don't see it again because it's too overpowered, but it's really cool for the movie. The human stuff in this movie is great. Super interesting lore to this movie. The characters are fascinating, and I really enjoy the plot, and we see a lot of human damage, which we haven't really seen since the original. The kaiju stuff is great. It's very scary, much more than usual. It's epic. I don't like Ghidorah, but otherwise, this movie's kaiju stuff is amazing. The music is fantastic. It's very new and very original, and the effects are some of the best, handled by none other than Shinji Higuchi, aka Shin Godzilla's director. Not to take away anything from Anno. I know Anno also directed Shin Godzilla, but everyone always gives Anno some credit. I'm just trying to give my boy Shinji some credit for once in my life. However, the sad thing is Shinji was uncredited for this movie. He didn't get any mention in the ending credits, which is unfair because the guy does a fantastic job. This movie is respectful to the original. It's very powerful, and it feels like the original movie, but done all over again. This is one of the great Godzilla movies that really nails what would happen, other than the crazy lore, what would happen if Godzilla was in the real world. It's up there with the original 1984 and Biollante. This movie is a definite 9 out of 10. I love it. I definitely recommend it to all Godzilla fans. If you haven't seen it, you gotta go check it out. It's fantastic. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, this one's a 9 out of 10. See you guys next time. D-Man, out. What's up, everybody? D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video. Today, this is Godzilla-Thon episode 30. This is the 10th week in a row that Godzilla-Thon has consistently come out on Wednesday. Well, technically last week was an off week because it was Mothra-Thon and didn't actually come out on Wednesday, but this is the 10th week in a row that I've done one of these reviews, so I count that as a win for myself. I don't know if I was able to do that last time. I feel like I was pretty successful at doing consistently towards the end there of Godzilla-Thon, but once I took hiatus between King Ghidorah and Mothra, it certainly felt very long for me, and so it's fun to be doing these reviews again. And I know it's just like, why are you talking about this? Because we're 30 episodes in, so this is technically 30 weeks of Godzilla-Thon had I been doing this consistently in order. And actually, this would be 31 because I did take a week off to do the Mothra review. Also, a lot of you guys were questioning about Mothra-Thon. Yes, Mothra-Thon will be happening, but it'll be happening after King Kong-a-Thon. I will definitely be doing. I'm super excited for that one because it's going to be short. Super excited for King Kong-a-Thon. A lot of you guys were like, what other reviews do you have planned? What other review series? I will be doing a Gamera-Thon, and probably because I'm inspired by Adam Noyce, I'll probably do an Ishiro Honda-Thon of all the Ishiro Honda movies that I haven't up to that point reviewed. Maybe it'll just be a Showa-a-thon, I guess, because there's a lot of Ishiro Honda movies in the Showa series, of course, but there are also a lot of non-Ishiro Honda movies in the Showa era of giant monster movies in Japan and tokusatsu, so maybe I'll review those. I'm not totally sure. We'll just have to see how it all goes down. But for this time, we're going to be doing episode 30 of Godzilla-Thon. That one will be for Godzilla X Mechagodzilla, popular American title Godzilla against Mechagodzilla. And before we begin here, I'm going to bash my DVD really fast. I'm not sure what DVD this is. It's a Columbia TriStar home entertainment release of the movie. Oh my lord, is the subtitles terrible. Like, there's a lot of the time in the movie when the subtitles aren't there, and I'm sitting there racking my brain trying to figure out what they said, trying to translate. Half the time in the movie I had to bounce back and forth between the English and Japanese dubs because at a certain point it just got annoying having to sit there and pause it and try and figure out what they just said in Japanese. So I realized, I can quickly go switch between the two versions of the movie, and you might just say, well, if it's that much of a hassle, why not watch the English dub? Because I'm trying to give the authentic review here. I don't want to watch the cheesy version of it, the run-down version of it. Well, actually, the Millennium dubs aren't bad. They just get a little annoying because they reuse the same voice actors, and they only had 5 voice actors to work with. So all the characters in all the Millennium movies are played by the same voice actors, I think with the exception of Final Wars, probably. But I didn't want to bother with that, so I just watched the Japanese dub, and I bounced back and forth between the two when needed. The movie starts out with a pretty brilliant military montage, which establishes pretty much the force that's going up against Godzilla in this movie, because this is a military against Godzilla movie, not a kaiju against Godzilla movie, even though Mechagodzilla can be considered a kaiju by some fans. Although it's Kiryu, it's a cyborg, so this one a little bit is a little bit more of a kaiju than the other Mechagodzillas. However, I still don't consider him that. I just consider him a mech. So, as per usual in these Godzilla and Mothra movies, funny enough, We start out with a typhoon hitting Japan. Now, Godzilla makes landfall during this typhoon, and this was always something that was very memorable for me as a kid, was this scene of Godzilla just rising up in the background behind this news reporter. It was awesome. There's also a lot of shots in this movie where water will just come rising up. It'll be like a huge geyser of water, and then when the water falls back down, Godzilla's suddenly revealed in it. That was always something that stuck out to me as a kid. Watching it again, it doesn't make too much sense, and I did always nitpick that as a little kid. Like, wouldn't it just be cooler if Godzilla just rose up out of the water? I was always a fan of the way he comes out of the water in the 98 movie as a kid, so when I watched this one, I was like, it's cool and all, but it doesn't make too much sense. And even still, when I watch it, it's like, yeah, why is the water all fly up out of the air? It's like a big geyser effect that he has, but it doesn't make sense, but it looks cool. I guess that's all that matters, is that it looks cool. So I was actually pretty surprised by the fact that the first 30 minutes of this movie takes place in the year 1999. It doesn't even take place in 2002 or 3 when the movie is set. Now, at this point, Godzilla's design is a perfected version of his Godzilla 2000 design. It is no longer green, it is now the charcoal gray that I know and I love, and it is also just a super awesome version of that Godzilla 2000 design. He has a lot of similarities to that design. He has the neck frills, the spiky neck frills. He has the very long, very sharp dorsal fins, the very long tail. He has the similar face with the cat-like structure. But this one is just the ultimate version of that. Like, I hate the Godzilla Millennium 2000 design. This design, though, this design, I'm a fan of this one, which is surprising because I didn't really remember liking it as a kid. Like when I went into this movie, I remembered Godzilla looks alright in this movie, and then I watched it and I was like, oh man, he looks awesome. This is definitely not one of my top favorite Godzilla's designs. I'm a sucker for the Showa era, and I also really do love the Heisei design, as you guys all know. 89 and 74 and 64 are all my favorites. But this movie is a good one. It's up there. He looks awesome. The Final Wars design, ooh, we'll get there. It's awesome. Love it. So Godzilla looks great in this movie. However, he is a bit small. And I want to highlight this before I forget. The animatronics in the face have come a long way. Back in the Showa era, no facial expression at all. He just same blank stare all the time. Occasionally, sometimes you'd have the eyelids closed, but they moved all slow and clunky. In the Heisei era, they did a lot with the animatronics in the face. They made it look very good. I wouldn't say that it looks convincing in 85 or 84, and it doesn't look great in some of the movies, but once you get to Destroya, there's a lot of great facial work in the animatronics. He's got the cheek movements, he can blink now, he has a little bit of expression, but here in this movie, Godzilla can do a lot. Like, he can wince, he can do so much that he's never been able to do in the face before, and it's awesome because thinking about it from a practical standpoint, this Godzilla's face is a lot slimmer than the other Godzillas were. The Heisei Godzilla had a really bulky face. This Godzilla is really long and thin, meaning that they had to pack those animatronics into a very long and thin skull. I just find that very cool, and this could be also puppet work, lends itself to that, but for the most part, I do believe it's animatronics, and it just looks very convincing and very, very impressive. But like I said, Godzilla is a bit small in this movie. He doesn't tower over things like I'd like him to. In fact, this very first scene takes place in the village, but you can't tell it's a village because it's so high up on his legs. Like, all the little buildings are high up on his legs. It's like Godzilla walking through your neighborhood and your house is the size of his knee. It doesn't give him that much of a menacing feel, as in Shin Godzilla, he's kicking buildings all around. He is huge in that movie. I don't know. I've always been a kind of a fan of when Godzilla's bigger than his surroundings, like a lot bigger than his surroundings. So this movie, it kind of takes me off guard because he is very small compared to his modern incarnations and his Heisei incarnation. In the Showa era, he was the same height as he is now, but it wasn't noticeable because the buildings around him were so small. Now, he's the same height as he was in the Showa era, which I like the continuity carryover. However, he just doesn't have the same menacing feel as he did back then. So the military attacks Godzilla, and he's not damaged by tanks. So they implement some masers, the weapons used in War of the Gargantuas, against him. Godzilla's actually hurt and a little bit aggravated by this, so he uses the atomic breath on a mountain, knocking down some rocks. In the commotion, an SUV full of soldiers is trying to escape the situation when a maser tank, piloted by our main character, starts rotating to get out of there, and the rotation winds up knocking the truck right off the cliff, and the truck rolls down right under Godzilla's foot, where he steps on the truck and kills a whole bunch of soldiers. The scene ends with the silhouette of Godzilla being struck by lightning, and it is absolutely awesome. This movie is full of great visual and cast references to past movies, as well as some other references which are direct references to previous Showa movies. This I've always seen as an Easter egg to the Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla scene in the very original movie in 1974 when Godzilla is being struck by lightning all around him. And there are numerous other throwbacks to other movies in this, as well as, like I said, a lot of returning cast members. It makes this movie feel a little bit more for the fans because of that. Godzilla is identified on the news, and it's here we learn about this universe's continuity. The history has Godzilla attack in 1954, as we learn from the Prime Minister. I wrote down her name, but I'm not going to pretend to try and pronounce this, so I'll just say the Prime Minister. She basically reveals to us through a CGI flashback to the 1954 movie, Godzilla did die at the hands of Dr. Serizawa. However, unlike in the Showa and Heisei continuity, his bones were not disintegrated. Now, something that I find interesting is whenever this movie shows clips of the 1954 movie, it is a CGI recreation of Godzilla. It's not a clip from the movie. In fact, it's a recreation of what happens in those movies. I don't understand the choice on why they decided to do that. It's not like the old footage looks bad. It looks very impressive. The special effects still hold up. I think maybe it has something to do with the picture quality and the aspect ratio, but I still would have preferred the actual clips from the original movie. They could have chalked it up to something like, oh, you know, this was, I don't know, news footage or something stupid like that, just so that we could have the original footage back. I would have liked something like that because the CGI really throws me off. It doesn't look great, and it's always been noticeable to me. Even as a little kid, I always wondered, why does it look so weird in this movie? It's from the original, but why does it look so weird? However, I really do like the continuity, bringing back Godzilla's original 1954 design into this continuity, whereas in the other Millennium movie, Godzilla vs Megaguirus, they really did away with that and just had the design be the Megaguirus design from the start. We also learned that in 1961 Mothra attacked. There's definitely a reason why I watched Mothra. Now you can kind of see it, even though I spelled it out in the Mothra review why I watched it. Well, that'll be important next week, so let's move on. We also find out that in 1966, Sonda and Ghidorah, or at the very least Ghidorah, they don't actually talk about Sonda, but it's clips from War the Gargantuas attacked, so I'm just going to say in 1966, Sonda and Ghidorah fight to the death in this continuity, which is awesome. I love War the Gargantuas. If you guys saw my review of that, you know it's one of my top favorite movies of all times. I definitely love seeing it get some recognition here in the Millennium Era of Godzilla. And this is where we find out that the Maser tanks were developed, and we also find out that the Maser tanks were kind of a spin on the atomic heat rays that they used against Mothra in Mothra. So it kind of goes from the atomic heat rays used in the original Mothra to the masers used in War of the Gargantuas to the masers used in this movie, which is a cool evolution of the military power in this Godzilla universe. And now to conclude the previous continuity, we find out Godzilla is back as of 1999. Akane, after the death of 6 or so soldiers, is transferred to the data room in punishment for her mistake in battle. She's the one who was responsible for piloting the Maser tank, and she's the one who the deaths of the soldiers are blamed on. I noticed when watching this movie that there's a lot of Shin Godzilla actors in here, so I guess that's just another reason why Shin Godzilla is so great, is because of how many actors it reuses from this Millennium era, as well as, you know, some returning from previous Heisei and stuff. A trilobite is cloned and turned into a cyborg by this guy called the Mr. Yahara. Now, Mr. Yahara is recruited by the military to work for them. I like that scene because it's very awkward. They like, two guys just walk up to him and they go, "Hey, we're from the government," and then you just cut to him being like in the government, like in the military facility, learning about Godzilla's bones. So he joins a team of Japan's greatest scientists who are shown Godzilla's bones, Godzilla from the 54 movie that is, that were found in the Boza Peninsula. The Japanese government passes a law granting the construction of a Mechagodzilla. Akane is in full support of this plan. Yahara and his daughter Sarah talk a little bit about Mechagodzilla and the project, and they decide to take the job so Sarah can hang out with some baseball players. Yahara successfully gets the Godzilla bone cells to start dividing again. This provides some fresh DNA for him to start mapping. Sarah is upset that her mother didn't get this special treatment and get revived from the dead and turned into a cyborg, which, you know, that would be awesome and all, but yeah, that'd be kind of freaky too. A new prime minister is appointed, and again, I'm not going to pronounce his name, but he's pretty cool. He's straight down to business. I like this guy. I like the actor. He's been in the Millennium Era. He will be in the Millennium Era Era a bit more. I don't know if he returns in Shin Godzilla, but he definitely has one of those very familiar Godzilla faces, so I don't know if he was in the Heisei era or not, but he's definitely one of the actors that sticks out to me. There's a big montage that shows that even though Akane has been transferred to the data room, she still continues to train for combat. Mechagodzilla's construction is finished by 2003, so now we're back in present time, or technically the movie comes out in 2002, so the future, but either way. Mechagodzilla is called Kiryu in this universe. I don't know why they decided to change his name from Mechagodzilla. I guess Mechagodzilla is just too long to say. But as a little kid, I always refused to acknowledge him as Kiryu, and I always thought that was a dumb name, so I just called him Mechagodzilla 3. Even though as a little kid I had never seen Mechagodzilla 2 from the Heisei era, I still knew that there was that character. Akane is promoted to Kiryu pilot after they decide that her leave is done and that she can return back to work. The team is led by Colonel Togashi. It's probably a good thing he's not a major character because I definitely don't know how to pronounce his name. Hayama starts threatening Akane because his brother was killed as a result of her mistake in the past. There's a great training montage showing off just how badass Akane is, as she shows she is just as tough as all the men and can do everything that they can. She's got to be one of my favorite Godzilla protagonists. I don't remember if she has a prominent role next movie. Fingers crossed that she does, but if she doesn't, I'm going to be super disappointed. I've actually only seen Tokyo SOS a good 2 or 3 times, so I do not remember. But I did watch this movie so much as a little kid that she's always been one of those characters that's just been like one of the big Godzilla characters for me. Akane notices Sarah has something called sleeping grass, which still to this day I do not know if it's a real thing or not. Now, sleeping grass is a living grass that reacts to human touch, or I guess just touch of any kind maybe? I'm not sure. But it'll like move when you touch it, and so Sarah has a special bond with it because she considers it to have the soul of her mother. Yahara hits on Akane, which is one of the subplots in the movie is their relationship, and it doesn't really like go anywhere big, which is another thing I like, is that it's not a forced romance plot, but it's there. It's still in the background, and I do find it kind of funny, which I'm supposed to, because it's supposed to be a comic relief storyline. Hayama starts being a dick for no reason until Akane has to slam him down face first onto a table and send him packing. Kiryu's specs are ran through as we find out that Mechagodzilla has been completed. It turns out that Kiryu will run on a DNA computer and can be controlled both manually and remotely, which is a good thing that they bring this up now so that it doesn't take us off guard later. The downside to Kiryu is he only has 2 hours of charge before he has to go back for charging. But they can remotely charge him for longer fight durations on the spot, which makes it a little more realistic, but at the same time it's like, who cares? It doesn't really play a big role in the plot, so we really didn't need that. Kiryu's main weapon is something called the Absolute Zero Cannon. This is a cannon that shoots a big ice ray that freezes things to negative 273.17 degrees, presumably Celsius, they don't say, but it's Japan, so I think it's Celsius. Now that is incredibly cold. It freezes it down to a molecular level so that by the slightest vibration it can be destroyed entirely. But the downside to that is that it uses 40% of Kiryu's energy. Godzilla is spotted headed inland, and Kiryu is deployed. Godzilla lands in the Japanese SeaWorld. I don't know what it's called. It's Japanese SeaWorld. He lands at Japanese SeaWorld, and Kiryu attacks first. Again, this is like the 4th time Mechagodzilla's in a movie, and it's the 4th time Mechagodzilla attacks first. And Kiryu hits Godzilla with a ton of missiles and masers, which, first of all, I don't know what Godzilla's deal is, but he sees Kiryu land and he just goes completely still. Like, he's like, oh, I guess I'll just stand here and just get hit by these missiles. They don't even move that fast. Just step out of the way. I don't know. It bugs me because it's very awkward the way he just stands there. But he's hit with the masers, and those really do some damage to him. As Godzilla retreats, he roars, triggering the DNA computers to act as the 54 Godzilla as the 54 Godzilla's consciousness emerges for the first time. Godzilla leaves before anyone can use the Absolute Zero Cannon on him, and Kiryu's eyes turn red as Kiryu starts to attack Japan. Now Kiryu is acting under Godzilla 1954's will. Akane saves Hayama from a crashed plane, and Hayama's all like, I hate you, which is just dumb. I would have liked it more if Hayama was like, wow, you accidentally got my brother killed, but you purposely saved me. Now we're square. But he doesn't. He's just like, well, you suck. All the way up until the very end of the movie. Kiryu destroys a bunch of Japan. In fact, Kiryu destroys more in this one scene than Godzilla does in the entire movie. and then goes stationary after an epic and iconic shot where he walks straight through a building. It's awesome. There's this building that's like, I don't know, like 50 feet taller than him, and he walks straight through it, cutting a big hole straight in the middle of it. It reminds me of that shot from the Godzilla 1998 when there's that building that has the big hole cut out in the middle of that one. It reminds me of that, but Kiryu just walks straight through this building, but the structure's still standing around him. It's awesome. And then Kiryu goes stationary as his battery dies, and in my favorite shot of the entire movie, you see his eyes slowly start to shut off from red, and you see the sand and all the destroyed rubble on his face start to blow away in the wind as the sun sets in the background. It is gorgeous. That is something that I will never forget that shot. It's awesome. Turns out that the malfunction stems from Kiryu's connection to the Godzilla bones, and so Sarah freaks out about how Kiryu is being treated as something less than a life form, even though Kiryu has life, and that Godzilla and Kiryu should be friends. And it's, I don't know, it's about this time in the movie when we learn that the reason she's all like this is because her mother, an unborn sibling, died when she was a little child, when her mother was sick when she was pregnant, and both passed away. And I guess this just turned her into Morgan from The Walking Dead somehow.
All life is precious.
Godzilla shows back up, and there are lots of great menacing shots of him as he's making his way inland. Like a lot of shots of him blasting down planes, and then you see them falling in front of him on fire, and he's just slowly moving towards the camera. It's awesome. Godzilla destroys the Shinagawa district because this is a Godzilla movie, and the Shinagawa district of Tokyo cannot catch a break lately. Kiryu is dispatched, and Akane and Sarah become friends as Akane goes into battle. Godzilla attacks a hospital that Tashimori from 2 movies ago, aka Godzilla vs Megaguirus, is working at. Now, it's not the same character, but it's the same actress. She has a lot of screen time considering she's a background character, so they definitely wanted to bring attention to the fact that it's the same actress. She's kind of the groundwork for Akane, as she was the first kind of prominent fighter female character in all of Godzilla, and now we have Akane who's one-upping her in every way. And it's at this point in the movie when I really realized that Godzilla against Mechagodzilla is almost a spiritual remake of Godzilla vs Megaguirus. Godzilla vs Megaguirus has a similar plot with the female soldier who feels responsible for the death of some other soldiers, so she's trying to make up for it the whole movie. It's got a lot of science against Godzilla, and then it's got some fun monster fights at the end. I just think that Godzilla vs Megaguirus sucks in every single way, and this movie doesn't. Kiryu doesn't fly in this scene, but he does fall with style as he crashes right into Godzilla. I wonder how many people got that reference. Now the fight is on. There's a lot of monsters flying around through the air as one kaiju will smack the other one around. It's kind of awkward, and I know I just referred to Kiryu as a kaiju, even though earlier I said that Kiryu is not a kaiju. But it's kind of awkward because it's like they'll be fist fighting, and then Kiryu will slam Godzilla with something, and you'll see Godzilla's body just go flying across the screen, and it looks real bad. If they took away all the monsters flying through the air and just had them get knocked over into buildings, the movie would be a lot better in my opinion, because it'd have a lot less of the clunkiness in this final fight. In fact, that's the biggest thing that I have to ding this movie on, is the awkwardness of the fights because of that. I've never been a fan of having someone get hit and then fly through the air like that. Even in Terror of Mechagodzilla, when Titanosaurus launches Godzilla through the air, I thought it was pretty awkward and dumb. Kiryu holds the speed, strength, and agility advantage over Godzilla and is able to jump straight over Godzilla's body, which is pretty impressive considering how tall Godzilla is, even though he's, again, not as big as I'd like him to be. However, this isn't an even fight because Godzilla has the stamina, endurance, and the firepower. So the fight, like I said, is very even and back and forth. Akane is forced to combat Godzilla from inside Kiryu after Kiryu's connection to the jet control has been lost. Hayama sacrifices himself for Akane, but Akane still is able to save him using Kiryu at the very end. The Absolute Zero is used point blank on Godzilla, and both Godzilla and Kiryu barely survive. Kiryu is nearly entirely destroyed, missing both a hand, a portion of his face, a chunk of his chest, and a whole bunch of other pieces here and there. We find out that Kiryu will be repaired and used again. This is our first hint that there will be a sequel. Godzilla has a huge blast hole right in his chest, which leads to a pretty awesome scar next movie, and Akane emerges safe and sound. After the ending credits, Kiryu is seen in repair. Akane opens up to Sarah and her father, saying that she'll take them out to dinner after all, which is a nice payoff to the relationship thing that we've had going on throughout the movie, and she salutes Mechagodzilla as the movie ends. The human cast in this movie is pretty good. I am a huge fan of Akane. Like I said, she's just one of those Godzilla characters that always stuck out to me, and I really like Hayama. He's pretty funny, and I think he carries a lot of his scenes fairly well. And I don't actually have a problem with Sarah, which is surprising because I'm not often a big fan of kids in kaiju movies. The kaiju stuff in this movie is absolutely awesome. The special effects are very well done, and the only thing that I dislike is having the monsters fly around through the air. The music is a big step up from Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, and it is also very memorable and very iconic. It's the same composer, and it reuses a lot of the same themes, which adds to the fact that Godzilla vs. Megaguirus is just a prototype for this movie, because this movie kind of perfects everything that movie does wrong. And also, it adds to the very little that movie does right. Like I said, the effects are very well done, and so I have to commend the movie for that. Overall, I wouldn't consider this one of the best Godzilla movies ever, however, I would consider it a very good one. This is a definite 8 out of 10 for me, and I think the only thing that holds it back is just my love and nostalgia for the Heisei and Showa era. This one's definitely one of my favorites right after GMK and the Millennium era. In fact, I think this one's my third favorite because Final Wars just holds a special place in my heart. We'll just have to see though, because I don't know much about Tokyo SOS, and I look forward to watching it next week. Alright guys, that's it for this episode. Thank you guys all for watching, I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time. D-Man, out. What's up everybody, Demon back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing my review for Godzilla Tokyo SOS. This is part of Godzilla-Thon, episode 31. So let's jump right into it. Starting off, Godzilla Tokyo SOS, also known as Godzilla x Mothra x Mechagodzilla Tokyo SOS, that's the Japanese title. So this movie came out in 2003. I never watched it a lot as a kid. I rarely ever got the chance to see it because the only way I had access to it was through Blockbuster Video, and this movie was often rented out for some unknown reason. I'm not sure why. It was this one. Blockbuster also had Godzilla vs. Gigan, which I owned on VHS. They also had Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, and they also had Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla on DVD, surprisingly. I rented all those from Blockbuster, even though I, like I said, already owned Gigan, and I also already owned Mechagodzilla on VHS. But at the time, the DVD colors were just so cool to me that I'd always rent them from Blockbuster just cuz. But this movie was one that Blockbuster had in their roster, they just never had on stock. So I never got to watch this movie too often. And I didn't get it until Christmas a few years ago, like 5 years ago, and I don't actually think I watched it after I got it. I think this might be the first time in years that I've gotten to watch this movie. Although I did, like I've mentioned in previous reviews, Godzilla-Thon for the past couple years, I've never actually made it this far in the Millennium series in Godzilla-Thon, or I'll skip around. Previously I skipped to GMK, and then from GMK I skipped straight to Final Wars because I remembered not liking the Mechagodzilla series for some reason. I definitely changed my opinion after watching these two movies. They are fantastic. Not only is Godzilla against Mechagodzilla a great start to a Godzilla series, but this Godzilla Tokyo SOS is one of the best Godzilla sequels ever, and I do emphasize the word sequels because although I don't consider it one of the best Godzilla movies ever, I do think it is one of the best direct sequels Godzilla movies ever. And I know there aren't a lot of them. You really only have the Heisei era and Mothra vs. Godzilla's follow-up, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. I believe Tokyo SOS is a better follow-up than Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster was to Godzilla vs. Mothra, and I also believe Tokyo SOS is a better follow-up film than any of the Heisei era films were. Not that I like it more than I liked all the other Heisei films, it's just that I think the continuity and the way it handles itself as a sequel is done better than any of the other movies were done as sequels. I hope that makes sense. So this movie starts off with Kiryu being fixed up and rebooted based off where we saw him last movie, completely destroyed. Godzilla wakes up in the ocean, and then suddenly we cut to a UFO flying near Japan. This scene is incredible. It's just so well done. The way the wind moves through the clouds and the way you see the clouds being blown up through the air as something massive moves underneath them is very awesome. It's very eerie as well. And you just see these fighter jets closing in on some sort of strange thing, some sort of strange aircraft in these clouds. It's a really cool way to start the movie. Like I said, some military jets try and stop it when suddenly a huge wing rises up above the clouds. It's revealed as Mothra darts up and down through the clouds, dodging missiles before vanishing. I can't tell if Mothra has some sort of teleportation ability in this movie. The movie kind of hints at it, but I'm not totally sure. You'd think if she did, she'd teleport away when Godzilla was fighting her, but she doesn't. So that's the only thing that leads me to believe that maybe she doesn't have a teleportation ability. Although, like I said, some of the things you see her do in this movie really leads you to believe that she does. And if anyone's going to call out that my Mothra's torso is yellow instead of white, I know it's yellow instead of white. That's actually just supposed to represent that the sun's reflecting on Mothra. You know, the sun's behind Mothra in my picture, and although the sun's orange, it just didn't look right orange, so I just painted her yellow. She does have some white strokes on her. You can see them. I don't know how many people look that in depth onto my thumbnails, but if you're looking at it, and by thumbnail I mean the video image, not the actual video thumbnail, I don't know how many people actually look that in depth in the art, but yeah, she does have some white on her. It's stated that Kiryu is still non-operational based off the damage that he received during his fight with Godzilla. We were introduced to our main characters of the movie, named Yoshi, Shun, and the grandpa Shujo. Mothra's fairies step out behind a book, making Shujo remember his time in 1961 during the events of the original Mothra. Turns out that Shujo in this movie is Shujo from that movie. It's pretty obvious considering he's played by the same actor, but in case any of you didn't know, it is the same character from Mothra. That is the reason why I did Mothra for Godzilla-Thon, why I started Mothra-Thon, is because I'd never seen that original movie, and I knew growing up that that movie had a lot to do with this movie. That's something that I always remembered, was never totally understanding Mothra's storyline in this movie because I'd never seen the original Mothra, and I wanted to fix that before I reviewed this movie. And I'm very glad I did go back and watch the original Mothra, because although they recap the events of that movie in this movie, they don't do a totally great job. The Mothra fairies explain that Kiryu's creation was a mistake on mankind's part, and how the use of Godzilla's bones is a bad thing. They say that Godzilla's bones must be returned to the sea, and then from that point on, Mothra will protect Japan. They explain that Mothra's attack in 1961 was not by her, actually it was a him, but by her choice. And if the humans don't return Godzilla's bones to the ocean, Mothra will declare war on the human race, which is kind of hilariously awesome. Now, I'm not sure if they provide a valid explanation for where Mothra was during the events of the last movie, presumably laying an egg or something, but they do explain that from this point on, Mothra will act as Japan's protector as long as Japan obeys by her orders. Which is super fascinating. We've never gotten a dynamic like that in a kaiju movie before, where the kaiju's basically holding the humans hostage. Usually they just destroy. They don't often think about things like Mothra does in this movie. So, Shun and Shujo, they really like Mothra. They're all for Mothra. But Yoshi has his doubts. From this point on, I'll call Shujo, Shujo M, as in Shujo Mothra, so that I can call Yoshi Shujo, because that's what they call him in the movie. Kiryu has a new crew for some odd reason. You guys know I was a fan of last movie's cast, and they just scrap them for this movie. In fact, we don't even see Sarah or her dad in this movie at all. We don't even hear about them. But thank God we get a cameo from Akane at least, so that we don't just drop an entire storyline from that movie. So Akane, it turns out, is heading off to America to receive further combat training, and then come back to Japan a year later or whatever and talk about her discoveries. Atsudza takes her place. I'm not going to pronounce that girl's name a lot. You don't have to get used to me saying it wrong, because I won't be saying it a lot. I don't know why they decided to replace Akane. Maybe she just wasn't well received in Japan when the movie came out. Maybe people were like, this protagonist isn't that interesting. I thought she was great, so you guys all know my thoughts on that from last review. I thought she was awesome, so I don't know why they replaced her. It's like if they just replaced Miki Sagusa. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand it. That's your series protagonist right there. That's how she was set up to be. Miki was set up to be the series protagonist for the Heisei era. If they just suddenly replaced her with a different girl partway through, or even a dude, like, that wouldn't make any sense. I would try and come up with a better comparison, but they really don't have any returning characters other than that. They have Mirai in the Showa era, but you replace Showa casts every single movie, so him coming back is just super surprising. I don't know, it's just very odd that they would replace the main character from last movie. And she's in this movie too, so it's not like the actress had something else going on, or maybe she did and she only had time for the cameo. I don't know. I find it very odd. So Shujo M recaps the events of the original Mothra to Shun, saying that he's making a history book about all of the events in that movie. Shujo clearly wants to be Kiryu's pilot. We know this because he's worked on Kiryu for a long time, and he has lots of times where he'll be standing silently in the movie admiring the machine. Akane says her final goodbye to Kiryu as she heads out to America. She wishes Shujo luck on repairing Kiryu, although she says Kiryu should just be left alone and left to rest. Igarashi, the Prime Minister, is told to stop Project Kiryu by Shujo M. Igarashi agrees that Kiryu should be destroyed, but only after Godzilla is dead. Kamobas's corpse is found on the beach of Japan. Now, I'm not totally sure on the pronunciation of this guy's name, but basically he's a giant Gamera-looking turtle that died. He's from the original movie Space Amoeba, and it turns out in this Godzilla universe that these creatures, these giant turtles, are a common species. They mentioned that a few of them have been seen before in Japan's history. Maybe they're referring to the events of Space Amoeba. I doubt it. But this universe clearly has a lot of the Showa-era films incorporated into it, so I wouldn't totally put it past it. Regardless, though, the giant corpse is found on the beach of Japan, and it becomes clear to the humans very quickly that Godzilla is the reason this monster was killed. A US nuclear sub is sunk near Guam, and it's completely destroyed by Godzilla, who basically devours it. It turns out Absolute Zero cannot be repaired due to the great cost of the diamond needed to replace its power core. I don't know why, on a technical standpoint, as in behind the scenes of the movie, they didn't bring the Absolute Zero cannon back. Maybe it was just so that it was less convenient for Kiryu to fight Godzilla, but I really like the in-story universe explanation for why they can't get it back, because it does make sense that Kiryu, a giant robot, would cost a lot of money, and they say that there's budgetary issues. They make it very clear that Kiryu was rushed to be recovered in this movie, leading to some problems later on in combat. It's a very real-world situation, and I love it. I love this realism in Godzilla. I don't care about if the monster looks real or its biology is real. I like the in-story explanations like this. That's the difference between my version of realism and a lot of other fans' version of realism, where they want things to be realistic, as in, 98 movie, Godzilla's more like an iguana. But in this movie, it's like, I don't care about that stuff. I care about the stuff like what you see in Godzilla 1985 and what you see in this movie, where you have a lot of political issues and budgetary issues and economic concerns and a whole bunch of great stuff that you don't really hear about in Godzilla movies very often. Shujo says Mechagodzilla can move, but is not that powerful without the Absolute Zero cannon. He then states that it will take 2 weeks to finish Mechagodzilla. Godzilla does not give them 2 weeks. Everyone gives Shujo crap for being an engineer and not a soldier for some reason, and Shujo gets into a little scuffle with this guy called Akaba and is summoned to a hearing. The mislead is that the hearing is about his fight with Akaba, but the reveal is that it's actually about Mothra. Shujo M lets Shujo decide Mechagodzilla's fate, as in if the Kiryu project will be stopped and Godzilla's bones will be returned to the water or not. Shujo decides to lie so that Mechagodzilla can be completed, and says Mothra didn't show up at his house, and this means that Kiryu will be finished. Godzilla surfaces and heads to Japan despite heavy bombing. Kiryu has a hyper maser installed instead of the Absolute Zero cannon. This gives him a little bit of strength in the chest long range area, but not too much, all things considered, when you think about last movie. Shinagawa is turned into an ambush site for Godzilla because it's still the most damaged area of Japan due to the events of last movie. In fact, reconstruction has barely just begun by the point this movie starts. This is something that you don't see a lot in the Godzilla movies, a lot of carryover damage in the city. In this movie, like I said, Shinagawa is completely leveled as a result of what happens last movie. And that reminds me a lot of how it was in the Heisei Gamera era, where you have Tokyo Tower destroyed in the first movie, and then it stays destroyed throughout all the rest. It's these sort of bits of continuity that really make this movie very special to me. I'm a sucker for continuity, as you guys know, so I love that. Godzilla starts triggering underwater mines as he starts making his way inland. It's a great scene because anytime a mine goes off in the water, the drums beat really hard. Godzilla rises out of the water in front of his Megaguirus fight site, which is something that they don't draw attention to. However, if you look in the background, it's clearly the same building. And if you pay attention to that movie, Godzilla fights Megaguirus in Shinagawa. Godzilla has a huge chest scar as a result of the Absolute Zero cannon detonating on him in the last movie. Shun runs away, and Godzilla is attacked. But Godzilla is able to eventually overpower the military and blow them all up with the atomic breath. Godzilla heads for Kiryu, and Kiryu is currently underground somewhere in the middle of Tokyo right now. Shun builds a massive Mothra symbol out of desks from his school. He gets the idea from Shujo M's original plan in the Mothra movie to paint the giant Mothra symbol on the airstrip to attract Mothra. It immediately attracts Mothra, who flies out of nowhere, coming in front of the sun for a great silhouette shot as she enters the battle. Mothra immediately attacks Godzilla, and she holds a huge speed and intelligence advantage over Godzilla. Godzilla bites off one of her legs, and although she doesn't really hold a lot of strength, she's still able to knock him over a whole bunch. Mothra Mothra releases her last resort, being her death pollen, and this does some real damage to Godzilla. It's not as powerful as it was in the Heisei era, where it had lightning bolts shooting him at the same time, but it is pretty powerful. It's a lot stronger than it was in the Showa era. And it's funny that Shujo M actually knows what this stuff is, because the only other time it was seen used was in Mothra vs. Godzilla in the Showa era. So I guess he's Mirai after all. Godzilla ignites the pollen, which is an awesome scene, and then all of a sudden the whole city blows up. Godzilla's left standing in a city of rubble. Mothra resumes the attack. Her wings are all chipped up and burnt, but she doesn't care. She's gonna die anyways, so she's gonna go for it. Kiryu's launched in order to protect Mothra. The White Herons take liftoff, another great carryover of continuity. Shujo heads out to save his family. We're in the middle of the area when Godzilla destroys Tokyo Tower. It's a pretty fantastic scene because you see Mothra dodge the tower and Godzilla cuts it off about where it was destroyed in the original Mothra movie. The whole top half of the tower falls over just like it did in that movie. However, this time, because Tokyo's a full-grown city now, it lands right on some buildings, knocking some rubble over. And there's a great shot of Shujo M and Son staring straight up as this tower falls right above head. Really makes you feel the weight of the destruction. Kiryu launches an all-out assault on Godzilla, which is a huge long-range missile battle, and that all happens after Mothra's knocked out. Godzilla really gets his butt handed to him in this movie, seeing as though Mothra kicks his butt for a little bit, Mechagodzilla shows up and then lays into him. Mothra saves Kiryu as Kiryu is about to get destroyed by the atomic breath when he's knocked over and can't get up. Mothra takes the hit and flies away, being knocked out. Her eggs hatch and two Mothra twins, not the little girls, but two Mothra twin larvae, head into battle. Kiryu knocks out Godzilla, which is awesome, and then Shujo finds his family. Kiryu, having lost his speed advantage from the last movie, is overpowered by Godzilla this time. The larvae join the battle last second. All three Mothras have a little conversation for a little bit, which just demonstrates Mothra's true intelligence, as all three of them formulate a plan together. Mothra dies saving her larvae, who are about to be destroyed by the atomic breath, and as the larvae watch their mother die, their eyes turn red as they become enraged. Shujo heads into battle, seeing as though he has to repair Kiryu and get Kiryu operational before Godzilla can destroy the mech. Kiryu, by this point in the movie, has fallen over and is very damaged by Godzilla. Like I said, he was overpowered due to his lack of speed. The White Herons distract Godzilla and the Mothra larvae attack him. One of the Mothra larvae bites his tail just like in the original Mothra vs. Godzilla. In fact, there's a lot of little great Easter eggs such as that in this movie. The Mothra fairies help repair Mechagodzilla, helping Shujo out. The military continues their assault with some laser cannons and some tanks, and the larvae web up Godzilla as Shujo manually overrides Kiryu. Shujo is trapped inside of Kiryu as Godzilla uses the atomic breath to seal the escape hatch shut. Suddenly, Kiryu resumes combat. Kiryu has a sweet missing eye as a result of being shot in the face with the atomic breath earlier, and then there's an awkward hug fight. I'm not a fan of these fights in these Godzilla movies where they'll just walk up to each other and hold one another, but that is exactly what happens in this movie for about 2 minutes. Kiryu uses this awesome drill hand to just plow into Godzilla's chest before releasing the hyper masers on Godzilla, which really hurts him. Like I said, Godzilla gets all kinds of effed up in this movie. Then all of a sudden, Godzilla gets all kinds of webbed up as the two Mothra larvae just shoot their webs running around doing the whole Mothra vs. Godzilla shtick on him. Godzilla's defeat triggers Kiryu into turning into Gojira. Kiryu grabs Godzilla and flies out to sea. Kiryu, of course, now being controlled by the original 54 Godzilla spirit. And Kiryu actually helps Shujo escape, having the words on screen pop up saying, "Sayonara, Yoshi." It's unclear why Godzilla has a liking to Yoshi. I guess the idea is just that because he repaired Kiryu, Kiryu's grateful to him. Akiba saves Shujo from falling out of Kiryu, and Kiryu sinks Godzilla into the Japanese trench. The movie ends with the final message that life must be within nature's order, and people must not play God. When something dies, it must stay dead. The larvae and fairies head off to Infinite Island. The last shot of the movie is Kiryu sinking into the ocean holding Godzilla, who's all still webbed up from Mothra's fairies. The after credits scene shows that there is still Godzilla DNA out there in the world. However, the date reads 1999, so I'm not sure what to make of that. I guess the idea is that they got the Godzilla DNA after Godzilla's initial attack in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and they've just had it ever since. The message is that mankind still hasn't learned their lesson despite trying to, and there will be a need for Godzilla to return again. The container that Godzilla's DNA is being held in is also a really cool Easter egg because it looks pretty identical to the Oxygen Destroyer. In this movie, the human story is pretty good actually. I am a big fan of Shujo's return from the original Mothra, and the new Shujo is also a pretty good character, the new guy Yoshi. The son doesn't have a lot to do in this movie, and Shujo M's daughter is just a cameo. I don't like the replacement of Akane. In fact, the girl who replaces her has so little to do in this movie, it makes me question why she was added at all. Akaba's okay, but again, he doesn't really do too much. The kaiju stuff in this movie is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's the best of the Millennium era because there's not too much going on, and it actually takes a fairly long time in this movie for anything kaiju related to actually happen. You have Mothra show up at the very beginning, but she doesn't do too much. She just shows up. So it takes a long time for stuff to get started, but once it starts, it doesn't stop. The special effects in this movie are fantastic. They're the most updated we've seen them to date. Mothra's effects are so impressive, and Godzilla and Kiryu are able to do a lot of really cool moves. The music in this movie is pretty good as well. I think Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla has the record for the best music made by this composer, but overall, it is a definite step up from Godzilla vs Megaguirus music, and it still holds the same theme and great aspects of the Against Mechagodzilla soundtrack. It's just missing some of the charm. This is a pretty solid movie, and I would recommend watching it back to back with Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla. It makes for a great viewing experience to watch both of them as they were intended to be seen as sequels. Overall, I do agree with some of my older thoughts on the movie that the pacing's a little too slow and it takes way too long for anything to happen, but now that I understand the Mothra plot and I can appreciate the continuity and carryover from last movie, I definitely enjoy this movie a lot more than I used to as a kid. I'd give this one a 7.5 out of 10. It's not bad at all. In fact, it's a good movie. I just don't think it works well on its own outside of being a sequel to Godzilla vs Mechagodzilla, and like I said, the pacing does kind of throw it off for me, so I can't give it as high of a rating as I gave the last movie. Plus, I don't think the human cast is necessarily as memorable as that movie, although Shujo's return from Mothra is a very important aspect of this movie. He doesn't have too much to do, and the new Shujo that we're left with, I believe his nephew, doesn't have too much interesting stuff going on with him. Overall, that's my review for Godzilla Tokyo SOS, guys. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time for Godzilla Final Wars. D-Man, out. What's up, everybody? D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new episode of Godzilla-Thon. This is the 32nd episode. This is for the final Toho Godzilla movie of the original, I want to say the original series. I know technically that implies the Showa era, but I mean, a lot of us on this channel, we grew up in the era where the movies ended here for the longest time, and we eventually finally caught up with it back in 2014. But this is where I consider classic Godzilla to end, and it ends in a bang, alright? I won't say if that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. You guys will get a feel for it throughout the review, and then you'll know by the end. But it ends with a bang. That's all I'm gonna say. So, starting out, what's my memory of this movie? I guess I want to say that because it affects the way I view it. So it's kind of a special movie to me because I was stuck with only the Showa movies, not all of them, but most of the Showa movies, and I had two, maybe at that point in history I had at least, no, I might not have even had two of the Heisei era for Godzilla movies, but I had a whole bunch of Showa movies, and I grew up watching them over and over and over again, and then all of a sudden my dad was like, hey, I found this movie on demand. And what movie was it other than this one? So I was a little kid. This was probably 2006, maybe 2006 time frame. This movie just kind of blew my mind. It was the first movie I ever saw on demand on Xfinity too, which is kind of funny, but this movie, when I first watched it, just so much action, so much going on. Godzilla's awesome. It blew my mind. I had no idea what I was in for when I started this movie. So I always have that special memory of my dad showing it to me, and it was like really late at night, so it was kind of cool too because I got to stay up, so it was fun. And that led to, you know, in the summer that year, I used to go to summer camp at this elementary school. It wasn't like my elementary school. It was just an elementary school that I'd go do summer camp at. And in it, we used to get gym time, like free time. So during free time, I used to always go hang out in the gym. And my brother, you know, he'd be doing his own thing, shooting hoops or whatever. I always found the volleyball And what I would do is I just sit there and throw it back and forth in the corner, like throw it against the wall. And I would pretend that the volleyball was Anguirus all rolled up in his ball. And, keep in mind, I'm a really little kid at this point, so the volleyball is, like, pretty big to me, so I used to just throw it at the wall and catch it a whole bunch and pretend it was Anguirus. And I'd do that, I'd hum the main, like, guitar theme for this movie. That's another memory that I always have about this movie is, as a kid, just doing that. Getting into the actual movie, this is the 50th anniversary of Godzilla, and Toho really wanted to celebrate, and they celebrated right. I don't think it's necessarily the best send-off for Godzilla. I've said this in previous videos. I think Godzilla vs. Destroya is the best send-off for Godzilla we've had so far. It is the most respectful and the most true to the original. This movie is not true to the original at all. It is one of the most different Godzilla movies I've ever seen. I've seen them all. It's one of the most different Godzilla movies ever. It's a crazy, weird movie. Toho did it right because they remake, in a sense, their classic send-off, Destroy All Monsters, which is awesome. And I really liked Destroy All Monsters, and I do struggle back and forth between whether I like this movie or Destroy All Monsters more. Ultimately, I do think I like this movie more because Destroy All Monsters just kind of drags a little bit. This movie does not drag at all. In fact, this movie is exhausting. This movie goes so fast and so much happens, you're just tired when you're done watching it. It's just a thrill ride. So, the movie starts out in what I can only assume is 1954 with Godzilla attacking in the Antarctic, so it's pretty different than usual. We got some lightning that flashes on screen and introduces us to him, and he gets into this fight with this thing called Gotengo. He's frozen beneath the ice while fighting Gotengo due to an earthquake and some bombs being blown up and causing an avalanche that traps him in the ice, just like Godzilla raids again. Now, I want to say this so I don't forget for later. Godzilla in this movie looks absolutely awesome. I do always go back and forth, because when I watch the movie, he looks very black. Like, his skin tone looks very black, and it's really cool and menacing, but then in all the production pictures or the stills of him, he looks very gray, or brown, I mean. So it's just kind of odd to see the two. Like, even on the DVD cover, he looks super brown, so I don't know what the deal with that is. I like the black color more. I think it looks a little bit more menacing than when he looks brown, but it is kind of funny that most of the stills that I see of the movie, he looks very brown. But Godzilla, like I was saying, looks incredible in this movie. They slimmed the suit down a ton so that the actor could do a whole bunch of intricate movements with it, and we do see a lot of this fluid fighting later on in the movie, and it works really well. No hug fest in this movie, that's for sure. I also love the red fiery eyes. They just look super menacing. And this is also my favorite Millennium design other than GMK. Well, I don't know. I always go back and forth on the two. Currently, at the moment, I'm thinking I like this design more than GMK, but I flip-flop so much on these two designs, it's hard for me to take a definitive standpoint. So, then we get a montage showing that Earth has been under attack by monsters constantly over the years, and the Earth has developed this new organization called M Organization to defend against it. Their main target is Godzilla. By the way, M Organization stands for Mutant Organization. The mutants are a whole nother thing. We'll get to them later. They're weird. Then we get an amazing tribute to Godzilla, as we have one of the coolest opening sequences in any movie I've ever seen, which is a montage of all 50 years worth of Godzilla crammed into one 3-minute clip. It's amazing. It's fantastic. And I used to, as a little kid, pause it and then put it in slow-mo and freeze frame it to try and see if I could figure out which movie everything was from. Of course, back then I hadn't seen all the movies, so I was guessing a lot, but I always found that so much fun to do. And no, a lot of people think that montage is showing that all the Godzilla movies previous, from Showa all the way up through here, have happened in this movie's continuity. From what we are led to understand, that is not true at all. That those movies are independent of this continuity, and this is just showing some radical alternate universe. So now we are in present day, presumably 2004 when the movie comes out, but they never specify. This is just a super advanced universe. They got crazy technology, Gotengo and all those other flying battleships. They don't really have a lot of technology that we have now. They have a lot of futuristic stuff. But I'll say it takes place in present day just because there was no date listed on screen. We pick up off the coast of Normandy where Gotengo is fighting Manda. The captain of the ship is an American pilot named Captain Gordon. He's pretty awesome. I'm not sure his acting's always great, but the character's pretty awesome. The fight's kind of weird. Manda wraps himself around the Gotengo and then eventually just gets obliterated because they heat him up to the point where they shoot him with a mazer and he freezes solid, and then they use Gotengo's big drill to drill right through him and kill him, which is cool. I don't remember which movie Gotengo and Manda are from. I don't know if they're from the original Showa movie together, but they were, they're both returning things from a Showa movie at one point or another, which is a cool reference. This movie's full of neat little stuff like that. We cut to a Matrix-style training montage. The combatants are Kaizama, he's the proud warrior, and our other character is Ozaki, the compassionate one. Ozaki is assigned to help escort a biologist named Otonashi investigate a mummified kaiju that has been found. It's now that we find out that Gordon's been put in jail for striking a superior officer in court for some reason. He was in court because he disobeyed a direct order or something like that when he was fighting Manda. The 12,000-year-old kaiju is revealed, that's the mummified kaiju, and it's revealed to be a cyborg enhanced by some unknown alien race. We never do find out much about Gigan's origins in this movie other than that. We meet Akira Takarada's character, who's strangely never named, and he is appointed Japan's Secretary General. The Mothra fairies reveal that Gigan was an evil enemy of Earth and fought against Mothra way back in the day, 12,000 years ago. Turns out all mutants on Earth carry some sort of evil gene, and the fairies say that it's up to Ozaki to decide whether he's good or bad. They give him some sort of special amulet that will be used later to dictate that. Takarada's plane blows up as Rodan flies past it, and he has some sort of sonic waves in this movie, which is epic. So Rodan flies over New York and creates huge sonic explosions that destroy all the buildings around him and set everything on fire, and the destruction scene goes by pretty quick, but it's really fantastic and very well done. I don't really like that whole gangster sub-scene leading up to it with the gangsters standing there, I'm gonna shoot you, cop, or whatever that whole thing is. That's stupid. Sound effects are really cheesy and dumb. I'm not a fan of that scene. Just cut to Rodan flying over and it'll be great. As this happens, Anguirus shows up in Shanghai. King Caesar attacks his original Showa homeland of Okinawa, which is also a neat reference. Kamacuras attacks Paris, Sydney's hit by Zilla, and Arizona's hit by Kamacuras. There's a nice reference to Gamera here as we see a little kid calling Gamera trash and throwing a toy of him in fire. Now, it's not officially a Gamera toy, but it's a Gamera toy. Now, Karyu, not Kiryu, fights Anguirus. This is another flying submarine ship like Gotengo. We see quite a few of these throughout the movie, although they don't really play intricate roles in the plot other than Gotengo. It's in this scene we have Anguirus' new ability where he can roll up into a porcupine ball and bounce away, which is what I would recreate with the volleyball at school. But the worst attack of all is the attack on Mount Fuji done by the evil Minya. I don't know where Minya comes from in this movie. He kind of just shows up, and then the grandpa's like, yeah, look, it's a monster. Like, what on earth? So the kid's all cool with it, and he's like, no, Grandpa, don't shoot this thing. I like it. But I don't understand at all. So is Minya brought to Earth by the Exilians, or is he legitimately the son of Godzilla? Also, if he's legitimately the son of Godzilla, how did he get there? Where does he come from? This movie doesn't provide any answers for the questions it, brings up. But it is, where does this come from? Did the Exilians drop him in the middle of Japan and they were like, yeah, this will give someone a good scare? But if so, why didn't they suck him back up when they brought all the other monsters up later on in the movie? Just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Minya's inclusion in this movie should have been done away with. He only bogs it down. I appreciate the reference. I love the fact that it plays Son of Godzilla music when he shows up, but just get rid of him because it doesn't add anything to the movie. During all this, Ebra attacks some factory somewhere and is taken down by mutants who shoot off one of his arms just like Godzilla bit off one of his arms and eventually shoot him straight into the ground. He's then transported away. This is when all the monsters are stopped by some sort of alien race called the Exilians, who saved the Secretary General before he got blown up by Rodan, and warned the planet Earth that the planet Gorath, or in the English cut, Planet X, is headed straight for Earth and will destroy everything if all human firepower is not concentrated on the one spot and fired at once to stop its impact. Ozaki, Otonashi, and her sister Anna find out that the Secretary General has been replaced with an Exilian. X! One of the Exilians mentions how the Exilian race released the monsters on Earth to attack them in the first place, and then he's questioning his superior and is like, so if we did that, why did we take them away? Why'd we get rid of them? And you have the superior Exilian who's like kind of the good guy, I want to say, because he's like, listen, all right, we caused some damage, but I'm still trying to maintain a relationship here. I'm still trying to be as civil as possible and you know, cause as little casualties as I can. I'm just trying to show them that we're in charge and weaken them up a little bit. X doesn't take too kindly to that. Ozaki then realizes that Gorath is fake, completely a made-up story, and both the Secretary General and Miss Namikawa, who is, you know, a name reference to Miss Namikawa from Showa era, from Invasion of Astro Monster, I believe that's the name reference, but she's also an Exilian, and she's the leader of, I don't think they make it totally clear in this movie. I think she's just like one of the people in charge of the M organization. Okinawa enlists the help of Captain Gordon. However, you don't find out how he gets to Captain Gordon, who is currently in prison, how he breaks into that prison cell, until you watch the deleted scenes in the after credits when you find out that he beats up a guard, steals his pass, and then goes and lets Gordon out. The X organization confronts the Exilians on national television, and the Exilians are then exposed. Takarada's head splits open after he's been shot multiple times by Gordon and turns into an Exilian. X takes over everything. He first kills his commanding officer, so now he's the lead Exilian, and he also controls all the mutants except for Ozaki, and it's at this point he reveals the Exilians' true motives, that
you're either the butcher or the cattle.
Basically, they're just going to use humans as like their food source, and they're going to kill and eat everybody. You know, that kind of thing. Just that good old, you know, good old alien behavior. So Ozaki, for some reason that we don't know yet, is not affected by X's control, and the X organization leader, or at least their squadron leader, is also not affected for some reason. I don't know if he's supposed to be a human or not. I don't think so, because he single-handedly takes on every single X organization mutant. By the way, I just realized that I've been saying X organization. I mean M organization, that's all. So anytime I've said X organization, just know I mean M organization. I'm saying X organization because when I was taking my notes, I got it confused with the X-Men because of mutants. That's all, so there you go. So the M organization's leader, like I said, he fights all the mutants to the death. Ozaki and Kayama get into some crazy motorcycle battle on the road, a high-speed motorcycle chase, which I always loved as a little kid. Gigan is released upon Earth. He's woken up by X. All the monsters are released back down on Earth, and the Exilians launch an all-out attack. The Statue of Liberty is blown up and falls straight into its Planet of the Apes position. Minya, Kenny, and Grandpa all head out together. Gotengo is prepared for launch, and it's here we learn that all natural mutants can be controlled by the Exilians. This is Godzilla's advantage, because Godzilla is not a natural mutant. He is a creation, an abomination as a result of man's nuclear testing, meaning he cannot be controlled by the Exilians, therefore he will always remain independent against all the other monsters. Gordon plans to release Godzilla upon the world so that Godzilla can destroy all monsters. He does so by blowing up the area above Godzilla in Antarctica, but that's after Gigan attacks him and knocks him out of the sky. He blows him up with Gotengo. Godzilla stops Gigan from destroying Gotengo, and Godzilla decapitates Gigan, showing some real intelligence here as he knows how to dodge blasts Gigan sends at him and knows exactly where to aim to kill him. Godzilla's pretty smart in this movie. Turns out there really is a huge meteor headed for Earth after all, as X reveals that something huge is coming straight to Earth in order to intercept Godzilla. Godzilla kills Zilla really quickly, which is an infamous scene that everyone loves. He then stops Kumonga, which always stuck with me as a kid, was Kumonga's new yellow webbing, which he's never had before. He's always had white webbing, and how Godzilla was able to grab onto it and throw him way out of there. Godzilla impales Kamacuras, which is an awesome scene. And then he decides, why not attack some cities along the way, right? So he attacks some cities, and here we find out that Godzilla's rage stems from the hydrogen bomb, so we still have some of that original allegory and message. But it has nothing to do with fish. This is a big distinction I need to make, because the English dub implies that Godzilla's all upset because people killed some fish. Like, there was a fishing crisis and Godzilla was not having it. I don't know. The English dub of this movie is not very good. I'd just say stick with the Japanese one. If you're really that worried about it, know that 50% of the dialogue is in English anyways, so you only have to read, 50% of it. And also, you don't get any weird explanations like Godzilla's upset because some fish died. Rodan, King Caesar, and Anguirus all go up against Godzilla at once, and he annihilates all of them. I always loved to see the way Godzilla would bounce off Anguirus' head. I also like the way he uses the other kaiju against one another, as he uses Anguirus' spiky back as a landing pad for Rodan, and he uses it against the monsters various times in order to hurt them. This fight's really fast-paced. The monsters all move super quickly and do some really crazy agile stuff like jumping off walls. Godzilla performs some intricate dodges and jumps here as well. Minya grows up to way big height, I guess. I don't know. He might be 100 feet. I'm not sure. He's like 50 to 100 feet, somewhere in that range. Kaizamas sacrifices himself to shut down the Exilian field, which, that used to always make me so mad. So he flies in into the Exilian ship through their force field, and then he blows up their generators so that they can no longer generate a force field so that Gotengo can get at the Exilian big ship. I always was like, hey, wait a minute, why don't we just, not have Kayama die right here, because he was always my favorite character in this movie as a kid. I'm not totally sure why. He kind of comes off as a jerk. The recent watchings I've had, I've kind of grown used to him. Like, when I watched this movie a few years ago, I was like, yeah, he really is a jerk. But this viewing, I was more like, no, he's not that bad after all. He's just like, he really likes to fight, that's all. I don't know just why I would like him as the main character, though. I guess, I'm not a big fan of Ozaki, still I'm not, so I probably liked him just because I had no one else to like. There's nothing wrong with Gordon or anything, I like Gordon as well. This movie just doesn't have too many memorable characters. Ozaki drives Gotengo through the mothership wall in order to get into the Exilian ship. Mothra is called upon for help. The Mothra fairies in this movie are the same ones who played Mothra's fairies in the previous movie of Tokyo SOS. Godzilla stops Ebra and Ghidorah pretty quickly, and X says it's time to harvest the humans. There's a great scene where Godzilla demonstrates his knowledge again as he plants himself deep into the ground before releasing a blue spiral ray onto the meteor in order to slow it down so that its impact against him won't be as great. The impact still happens and it levels Tokyo, but Godzilla tanks it and he is basically unfazed by it. The meteor is revealed to be a new monster, Monster X. Godzilla and Monster X kick the crap out of each other. Monster X's design's very interesting. He's very humanoid, but he also has 3-ish heads. He basically has 2 heads because he has one in the middle and then 2 half heads on each side. This is the setup for the big payoff later, but for right now in the movie, it's just known as a new kaiju. Monster X's abilities are pretty generic. He only has some laser eyes, and other than that, he's just kind of a fist fighter. But he is really cool in terms of the fact that he just looks very fascinating. We don't see many monsters like him. Mothra really tries to help out, but she's intercepted by Gigan X, which is my term for Gigan with chainsaw hands. Turns out that mutants are the crossbreed of Exilians and humans from way back in the day. They're the ancestors of crossbreeds, which is a really interesting idea that they don't mention too much. They just kind of mention it in passing. This is where Ozaki is revealed as a Kaiser, which is why he was unable to be controlled earlier. Turns out that X is also a Kaiser. Mothra sacrifices herself in order to kill Gigan, even though somehow she later on winds up alive. But she, literally obliterates herself, blowing up right here. She gets a wing cut off, set on fire, and then she drives herself straight into Gigan, and there's a huge explosion. Mothra is not coming out of that, alright? I don't know how she's alive later on. I don't know if that's canon either. It's just a deleted scene in the ending credits. So this is where Ozaki officially becomes a Kaiser. He reveals his full potential. X almost uses him against the humans, but he's stabbed by the amulet and turned good again. Godzilla saves the humans by shooting the Exilian ship, and that somehow releases Akira Takarada's character and the other general that was kidnapped, and the humans are able to stage a rebellion against the Exilians. Godzilla then decides to beat up Monster X real bad. He just sits on top of him and does the older brother, where he just wails down on him. Like I said, Takarada's character is in fact alive. There's a very Matrix-esque fight between X and Ozaki, and it results in X being defeated, which is why X decides that the ship needs to explode, and he sets it to self-destruct. Everyone's able to escape on Gotengo in time, though, and X just winds up blowing up with his ship. Monster X turns into Kaiser Ghidorah, which is the big reveal that the 2 half-heads were actually full heads just waiting to evolve. Ghidorah overpowers Godzilla, taking his energy, so Ozaki has to give Godzilla the power of the Kaiser. This results in Kaiser Godzilla, unofficial name. That's just my name. So Godzilla decides to decapitate two of Ghidorah's heads, blowing the middle one right off, and then he uses one of Ghidorah's heads to blow off the other one of Ghidorah's heads, and then he throws Ghidorah around a bit, and I mean literally, he grabs onto the only remaining head. So he blew off the middle and right head. He grabs onto the left head and just kind of swings him through the air, smashing him into the ground, throwing him around. It literally just beats the crap out of him. Then he decides why not just throw him straight up into the air and baseball style shoot him out of the ballpark. And that's exactly what he does. He throws him up into the air. And it's weird, by the way, that I make a baseball reference here because Godzilla does this thing earlier where Megaguirus is spitting at him in his ball form. And Godzilla jumps up and tail swipes him out of the air. But here, Godzilla uses his atomic breath to just fire away, shoot Kaiser Ghidorah through the air, obliterating him, and he shoots him with this brand new version of the red spiral ray, which is a great Heisei era reference. Godzilla shoots down Gotengo, and he's about to destroy it before Minya saves all the humans standing in their way so that Godzilla can't kill them. Godzilla and Minya head out to sea together, and the two swim away as the sun rises. The after-credit scenes, or I guess I should say the mid or during credit scenes, reveal that Mothra is somehow alive and so is Ghidorah, but that doesn't matter because so is Godzilla. The after-credit scenes are basically just like a montage that play while the credits are rolling that just reveal a whole bunch of deleted scenes. So, in this movie, the human plot, it's absolutely crazy. It goes by so fast. There's almost non-stop action in this movie. Something is always happening. There's no time to get to know or like the characters, and therefore I find it a bit weak. I'm not a big fan of any of these characters. I don't think any of them stand out. Gordon's pretty cool, yeah, I guess he does stand out. And Akira Takarada's character is really cool because it's Akira Takarada. There's no real reason for why I like him other than that, to be honest, because he doesn't do too much. Other than that, though, I always liked Kayama as a kid, but now, growing up, I kind of find him a bit bland. He's just generic. And Ozaki is no different. The kaiju stuff in this movie is pretty good. It's surprisingly a small amount. There's not a lot of kaiju stuff in this movie. Most of the fighting occurs, even in the final battle with Godzilla and Kaiser Ghidorah, between X and Ozaki. You don't actually see too much of what's actually going on with the kaiju fight, which I find very interesting. It might have just been done to save some money on the special effects, considering how many suits had to be made for this movie, but regardless, there's just not too much kaiju stuff in this movie. However, what there is. It is awesome. Anytime there's something kaiju on screen, it's absolutely fantastic. It holds your attention 100%. And this movie really makes me feel the apocalyptic vibe that Destroy All Monsters wanted us to feel, that many Godzilla movies before have wanted the audience to feel. This movie, I think, is one of the only ones ever to achieve that, where you really feel that Earth is in peril. The effects in this movie are pretty good. There's some bad CGI, and by some I mean quite a bit of bad CGI, but anything involving suits is very well done. Although Kaiser Ghidorah is very minimalistic, if you actually take the time to look at his facial sculpt and all his details, you'll realize there really aren't that many details. He clearly was one of the last suits they made, and so they didn't put too much time and money into him, and a lot of the time he's on screen, he's CGI anyways. And like I said, the CGI is not very good. It's pretty unrendered and bad. Overall, I'd give this movie an 8 out of 10. It's just too fast and too weird. I was gonna give it a 7 out of 10, but I decided this movie holds my attention way more than a lot of other movies does, so I had to give it an 8. Although I do think it lacks a lot of character depth. None of the character stuff is too interesting. The action scenes are fun, but it just doesn't feel like Godzilla to me. I don't think it's as respectful to the original movie as most of the other send-offs have been, and ultimately it just does feel like a remake to Destroy All Monsters. Although it is a good 50-year send-off for Godzilla because it sends him out with such a bang, I don't know if it's necessarily the finale that I'd ever want to see again. As in, I would never want to see another crazy action-packed movie in this style again in the Godzilla franchise. I like mine more personal and more deep. Well, that does it for this review, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. See you guys next time. I'm very excited. I want to talk about G14. I know a lot of people have the misconception on this channel that I dislike that movie. I don't. I absolutely love Godzilla 2014. I can't wait to talk about it next video. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time. D-Man, out.